Good morning and welcome to City Hall. We'll get started with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor Karen Green is here with St. Anthony Hospital. She'll lead us in the invocation. Afterwards, I'll ask Councilman John Pettis if he'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please stand?
Let us place ourselves before our Creator. Lord God, we thank you for this beautiful day. We thank you for each counselor here. We ask you to bless their health, to give them your special wisdom that comes straight from heaven above. We thank you, Lord, for this city. We thank you that this city is a place of righteousness, of beauty, and of prosperity. We thank you, Lord, for bringing peace and security to each citizen. These things we pray in the name of our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Rotary Club of Oklahoma City helps us honor one teacher each month as our Oklahoma City Teacher of the Month. And Nicole Jones is the winner this week. Nicole, would you come forward? She's right up here up front. She teaches science at Western Heights Middle School. We have a resolution. I'll ask the clerk to read it as we get settled here.
Whereas Nicole Jones has been named Teacher of the Year for May 2013 by Western Heights Public Schools and Rotary Club of Oklahoma City. Whereas Nicole has been teaching science for 7 years at Western Heights Middle School, with the last 3 spent teaching 8th grade life science. Whereas the classroom is brought to life by Nicole's paintings of large marine animals on the walls and her classroom zoo that contains a ball python, tortoises, and a giant amphibian. And whereas Nicole is involved in many aspects of school life, including yearbook, cheer sponsor for 5 years, team leader, and pulling off a district-wide Easter egg hunt with 300 children. Whereas Nicole is also one of the sponsors for the drama club that puts on plays written by her husband, Brian. Stage performances involve both students and teachers, and so far Nicole has been an angel, a pirate, a munchkin overseer, Abigail Adams, and a zombie master, which had a live snake as part of the costuming. And whereas, to recognize her dedication and talents, Nicole was named the 2012-13 Teacher of the Year for Western Heights Middle School, and in February was honored to be the District Teacher of the Year. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the City of Oklahoma City that they do hereby recognize and commend Nicole Jones on her selection as March 2013 Teacher of the Month by Western Heights Public Schools and Rotary Club of Oklahoma City.
Any teacher that appears with live snakes ought to be able to get a unanimous vote here. How about a motion? All right, cast your votes. And it passed unanimously. Let's show our appreciation for our Teacher of the Month, Nicole Jones.
I just want to say thank you to the City Council and the Rotary Club for this great honor. It's something I would never thought I would get. And thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Congratulations. Give our best back at Western Heights to the students and teachers out there. All right, thank you. Let's show our appreciation one more time. All right. It is EMS week, and we have our friends from EMSA here. Would you all come forward? We have a proclamation. I'll ask the clerk to read it as we stand in line.
Whereas each day residents of Oklahoma City and across the state rely on emergency medical service systems to help them in their hour of greatest need. And they are able to take comfort in knowing that well-trained, caring men and women are only a phone call away when the need for emergency medical treatment arises. Whereas emergency medical technicians, paramedics, and first responders serve on the front lines of our healthcare and public health system and their timely actions make the difference between life and death on a daily basis. Whereas, working alongside these trained professionals are many others whose dedication makes the EMS system function, including emergency dispatchers, physicians, nurses, and researchers, as well as colleagues in fire service and law enforcement. Whereas EMS agencies are an integral part of our community's health security strategy, and they help to build community resilience by strengthening all aspects of the emergency response system. Whereas, whether responding by car, ambulance, helicopter, boat, or plane, this diverse group of dedicated Americans provide crucial pre-hospital medical care to fellow Oklahomans when they need it most. Now, therefore, Mick Cornett, the mayor of the city of Oklahoma City, does hereby proclaim May 13th through 20th as Emergency Medical Services Week in Oklahoma City, and he encourages all citizens to take time to recognize the inspiring contributions of EMS practitioners and honor their dedication to serving their community.
Let's show our appreciation to our first responders here.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for this. I'd like to introduce three of our outstanding directors. We have Jim Wenham, John Peterson, and John Graham, Director of Support Services. And we also like to take this opportunity to thank Fire, who is our first responders and work diligently with the responsibility of maintaining health and safety in the streets and in our homes. Thank you once again.
Let's show our appreciation to EMSA and Steve Williamson. It is also National Public Works Week, and we have several of our employees from the Public Works Department here to help us draw attention. We have a proclamation also. Paul, everybody will line up. We have a proclamation. I'll ask the clerk to read it.
Whereas public works services provided in our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives. Whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operations of public works systems and programs such as water, sewers, streets, bridges, traffic, drainage, public buildings, and solid waste collection. Whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depends on these facilities and services. Whereas the quality and effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, and construction, is vitally dependent upon the efforts and skill of public works officials. Whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff public work departments is materially influenced by the people's attitude and understanding of the importance of the work they perform. Now, therefore, Mick Cornett, the mayor of the city of Oklahoma City, does hereby proclaim the week of May 19th through 25th as National Public Works Week in Oklahoma City, and calls upon all citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works and to recognize the contributions public works officials make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life.
Let's show our appreciation to our Public Works Department. Water, sewer, streets, bridges, traffic, drainage, public buildings, and solid waste collection. That's taking in a lot.
That's right. And, you know, it's a really great honor for the council and the city to recognize the people who work tirelessly to keep our roads and utilities running and clear so that we can drive them and they're passable. So often it's kind of a thankless job because nobody knows about it until something goes wrong. So it's really nice of you all to recognize us this week. Thank you.
We appreciate you very much. Eric, thank you all for bringing everybody down. Thank you. Let's show our appreciation one more time. It is also Bike to Work Day coming up this Friday. I know we have several members of the Bike to Work team. Come on up. We have a proclamation. I'll ask the clerk to read it.
Whereas for more than a century, the bicycle has been an important part of the lives of most Americans. Today, millions of Americans engage in bicycling as a viable and environmentally friendly form of transportation, an excellent form of exercise, and a great recreational activity for individuals and families. Whereas educating cyclists and motorists as to proper and safe operation of bicycles is important to ensuring the safety and comfort of all users. Whereas this activity will promote a healthy lifestyle that lends itself to a healthy community. Whereas the Association of Central Oklahoma Governments, Oklahoma City Police Bike Patrol Unit, Oklahoma State Department of Health, Metro Technology Centers, OU Health Sciences Center, Greater Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce, local bicycling clubs and groups, and bicycle shops throughout Oklahoma City are promoting greater public awareness of bicycle operation and safety education in an effort to reduce accidents, injuries, and fatalities for all. Whereas the 2035 OCARTS plan adopted by ACOG promotes the development of multimodal transportation facilities along with the Oklahoma City's bicycle transportation plan will set the groundwork for future bicycle facility development. Now therefore, Mick Cornett, the mayor of the city of Oklahoma City, does hereby proclaim Friday, May 17th as Bike to Work Day in Oklahoma City, and he encourages all residents to always wear a helmet when riding a bicycle, to recognize the importance of bicycle safety, and to be more aware of cyclists on our city streets.
Let's show our appreciation of our enthusiasts who are drawing attention to bicycling.
Thank you, Mayor. We're very excited. This is the 9th Bike to Work Day in Oklahoma City. We'll be riding from the State Fairgrounds on Friday morning into downtown to the Civic Center. And I guess Councilman White has a pass not to ride, as he hurt his arm, as far as I heard.
You got a note from the doctor?
Does he have a note? Probably needs a note from the doctor, but we'll hope to see him again next year. But thank you very much.
All right. Let's show our appreciation again. Thank you all very much. Congratulations. So we call the meeting to order. We're on item 3B of the council agenda, travel expenses for me to attend a task force meeting. This has already been through the council once, but some of the details changed. We thought it best to redocket it and have it voted on one more time.
What's the nature of this meeting?
This is actually being held in conjunction with the U.S. Conference of Mayors, which has already been approved by council.
I see.
This is a task force put on by the Clinton Global Initiative to get city leaders together to try and work better with the federal government on infrastructure needs.
Great.
And so they're bringing me in, I think, a half day early to be a part of that task force.
Is there a governing document when we go like to National League of Cities or any meeting that governs what travel expenses? I mean, that.
We very much have a travel policy. Yes, indeed.
Okay. Can I get a copy of that? And then.
Sure.
When was that made, or when was it last ratified by council?
I have no idea. We've had travel policies in place for decades, and it's been updated from time to time.
But would it have been many years ago, or relatively recently, or?
I don't know.
Okay. And all travel expenses are a matter of public record?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Couch?
And regularly, we have open records requests on travel expenses fairly regularly.
Mr. Couch, if you would, maybe the entire council ought to get a copy of that travel policy document.
Sure. Is there a motion?
Move the item.
All right. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 4 is a Journal of Council Proceedings. Item 4A is to receive the Journal of Council Proceedings for April 30th and May 7th. And item 4B is to approve the Journal of Council Proceedings for April 23rd. All right. Any comments or questions on the journal? Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 5 is a request for uncontested continuances.
Mayor, a couple this morning. On page 20, items for individual consideration, item 8A3. 8A3 on page 20, PUD 1484. The applicant has requested that this item be deferred until the May 28th council meeting.
Which one was that?
It was item 8A3.
Deferred
Yes,
until,
May 28th.
okay.
And then under, on page 21, on dilapidated buildings, item E, under 8F1E 2205 Northwest 10th Street, Request that that be stricken. The owner has removed. And then on to page 22, under item 8G1, item D, 6416 South Kelly. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item F, 100 South May. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item H, 2313 Northwest 3rd Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item N, 4409 Northwest 16th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item R, 2308 Northwest 31st Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item T, 2645 Southwest 40th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. And item V, 2625 Northwest 51st Street. We ask that that be stricken. Again, the owner has secured.
Right. Any other requests for uncontested continuances? We'll recess the council meeting, convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority. There are 2 items. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the MFA?
Your Honor, I have a question on MFA.
And I said 2 items, there are actually 6 items.
Well, there's the numbering is a little unusual, but on B is in boy 7. This relates to a project to improve 178th Street from Pennsylvania to May Avenue, and I'd like to make the public aware of the schedule for that. There is some concern that the city is not moving quick enough to accommodate the potential junctions we'll have with new Highway 74 as it goes north.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the latest schedule for the ODOT is, but it was 2014 at one time. I think it's been pushed.
The schedule for this project will be to, we're finishing up the right-of-way acquisition and utility relocations, and we'll hopefully get that cleared in the next couple of months, get that onto ODOT, and they're looking at a fall bid opening on that. It'd be a 9 to 12 month construction schedule, so fall of 14 that would be completed. Eric, do you have an update on Highway 74 as far as the state's plans?
What's your last information then, Eric, if it's not an update?
You know, we know that they continue to work on the project, but we haven't been provided any schedules yet, but it's clearly on their list for future construction.
Councilman, we'd be happy to get with ODOT and get an update on that and get that back to you.
I would appreciate it because, like I say, there is some concern that the intersections out there won't be improved in conjunction with the highway going through there. Thank you.
I think we're in good shape, but we'll verify that and get that back.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, John.
I have questions in regards to B6 as it relates to Kelly. What's the status of the updates for us widening from on Kelly from 23rd Street, Northeast 23rd Street to 122nd? Because I know we're going to end up doing it in phases.
Right.
But what's the status?
So the status is that we have portions of that section under construction for this year, but we've staggered the construction over the next several years so that we don't have more than 1 mile under construction at one time. That way we can provide adequate detours. I can provide you a detailed schedule. I'd be happy to do that, but it's every year there'll be a different mile in that section of roads up to 122nd that'll be completed as a part of the bond issue.
Okay, I would like to get with you in regards to Kelly from 23rd through 36.
Okay.
Right now, it's 4 lanes, and you really only have enough room for 2 cars to go through. So we need to take a good look at that to get it widened all the way so you can have 4 vehicles to really go down that street.
I'll be happy to look at that with you, Councilman.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the MFA? We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Adjourn the OCMFA, convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority. All right, we have a motion and a second. 4 items here. Any comments or questions on the PPA? All right, cast your votes, and it passed unanimously. We'll adjourn the OCPPA, convene as the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust. 5 items. We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on anything listed under the EAT?
Your Honor, I have a comment. The budget, which we approved this morning under item D, calls for deposits to cash reserves. And I raised a question yesterday of what those cash reserves are used for, and I got an answer, and I want to share it with the council. Is those cash reserves are used for 2 purposes. one, a rate stabilization fund, and a second fund to remove debris caused by severe storm damage in Oklahoma. So it's, I think, a justifiable contribution because those kind of dollars we have to have in reserve. So, but I did have a question. I wanted to share the answer with council. Thank you. All right.
Any other comments or questions on the EAT? All right, cast your votes, and it passed unanimously. We'll adjourn the OCEAT and reconvene the council meeting with the consent docket.
Item subject to individual consideration.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and it is a lengthy consent docket today. Any comments or questions on any of the items?
Mayor, I have a couple of things, if you don't mind. I'd like to mention item 6M and 6BB. And then item AX is, relates to a grant to the Sister Cities organization. And I currently serve on their board, and I'd like to ask if you would pull that so that we can vote on that separately.
Okay.
So that's AX.
All right.
And Mr. Mayor, I have a question and relates on page 13, AU.
I have a question on 6U.
Is that James that's today?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Your Honor, since we're bringing things out, identifying separately, item BC is the acceptance of artwork for the Merrill Medley Park. I see Collins here, the artist, and maybe we could just listen for a minute or two as to a description of the artwork being donated at the appropriate time.
Which item is that?
Item BC on
Okay.
page 14.
All right. All right, Meg, you want to get started with item M?
Certainly, Mayor, thank you. I just wanted to mention that we've talked a lot about the wonderful work that our Animal Welfare Division is doing in our partnership with the Oklahoma Humane Society. And in February, we authorized or adopted a resolution to authorize Development Services Department to apply for a $26,000 grant from the ASCPA, and we were awarded that grant. And so this resolution accepts the $26,000 to help us fund a position in our Animal Welfare Department. And then on to item 6BB, and this is another resolution accepting another donation, this one in the amount of $246,000 plus from the Civic Center Foundation. And we've talked about these a couple of times, but these are some new items. One of them is an upgrade to the Wi-Fi system that will provide some technical support, and the second is a partnership with the city to purchase a new stage lighting console to upgrade our facilities and improve the technology for our touring artists and productions. So I wanted to congratulate the Civic Center Foundation for the great efforts in partnering with the city to continually look at ways to upgrade our beautiful Civic Center.
All right.
Thank you.
John, item AU.
AU, just one quick question. Why is this retroactive?
Because it took some time to negotiate the actual dollar amounts. There's dollar amounts that are based upon loadings and flows out there, the strength of the volume of water that comes down the pipe, and also how much waste is in those. So we have to go back and calculate those dollar amounts based upon that. It's a multi-year contract, and so it's just a matter of reconciling those numbers and bringing it back.
All right, thank you.
I would like that also to be voted on separately, if we could.
Okay. James, item U.
Yeah, the completion date says March 2014 in the memo. Is that for just that first phase, or is that for the whole project?
The question's on West Britton Road, and the actual completion date is more realistic to probably be May of 2014, and it's for the entire project. So, this is a large water. There's obviously street improvements, but that's the anticipated time frame for the entire project.
David, item BC.
Just wanted to mention the fact that we are accepting a work of art named Balanced Objectives, and it was provided by a grant from Mary Blankenship Pointer, OG&E, and Mr. and Mrs. Bowers. It'll be placed in the Merrill Medley Park, and so I just wanted to point that out to you, Mayor. And again, the artist, Colin Rosebrook, is here with us this morning.
Okay.
Fellow Capitol Hill alumni, we've got to bring that out whenever we can. Thank you.
All right, we have two items that will be voted on separately. Why don't we have a separate vote first on item AX? And we'll rescind the previous motion and just have a new motion. If we could vote on, have a motion to vote on item AX. And a second. All right.
Second.
Cast your votes.
Mayor, with regard to that one, I have do we know how much other governmental entities put into that, to the sister cities? Are we the only one that makes a contribution? For instance, does the county or the state or anyone else contribute that? It's a good program. I just wonder.
I don't think government, they have other funds, but I think we may be the only governmental agency that puts money into it.
All right. Cast your votes there. Item AX passes unanimously. Then how about a motion on item AU? Do we have a second? All right, we're now voting on item AU on the consent docket, and that item passes unanimously. Now, how about a motion for everything on the consent docket except AU and AX? All right, and cast your votes, and those items pass unanimously. We're on to the concurrence docket.
Mayor, on the concurrence docket, I have just a comment on item B. It's kind of an interesting situation. At the last Water Trust meeting, we were presented a proposition to look into taking over the operations at Tinker of their water and wastewater. Kind of an interesting proposal that and Councilman Ryan pointed out at the time, that kind of, especially in the wastewater side, to take over someone's operation is certainly a matter that you have to look at long and hard before you take that on, because there's so many liabilities that involve that. But I think the fact that Tinker would ask us to do it and that we're willing to step up is just another example of the quality of the relationship that Oklahoma City has always maintained with Tinker. I'm really pleased to at least have the opportunity to look at it and see if there's a way we can make it work, because there's no question when as we go forward, and there will be another round of BRAC hearings at some point in time to determine which bases are going to stay where, the better the relationship between the municipality and the base, the higher the likelihood is that we'll retain Tinker. And all of us know what an important matter that is to the city and to the state in terms of employment and national defense. Any way you want to look at it, it's a big deal. So I'm really pleased they came to us, and I'm hopeful that we could make something work. But I just wanted to point it out because it just kind of, concurrence docket just kind of slides through. We don't have a chance to really talk about things on it very often, but this is really kind of an opportunity, I think.
Good point. Any other comments on the concurrence docket? All right, do we have a motion? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. We're on to item 8. These are items that require a separate vote. I thought first we would move up item 8J. Continental Resources is providing the city with $175,000 to fund some improvements up there. And I think Leslie Martin is here from Continental Resources. Leslie here? Hey, come on up. We appreciate the help in making our park system all it can be. You want to tell us a little bit more about the donation?
Well, the donation is from Continental Resources, and it's for $174,400 for $878 to improve Bluff Creek. It's to move some of the walking trails, is also to provide a pavilion that's going to be at Bluff Creek. We just are happy to help the parks out and improve Bluff Creek because we know that everyone in the city, as well as our employees, can enjoy that.
We really appreciate it, and we rely so many of our corporate citizens to help us in our Parks Department, and it's been a great project.
Your Honor, and I think we're really blessed in Oklahoma City to have had a long history of really supportive corporations, and I'm really pleased to see Continental Resources entering our city and then taking that position so quickly. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. We're happy to be here.
There's just a little more to that story, isn't there? Mr. Ham personally was out at Bluff Creek and was inspired.
He does like to be at Bluff Creek, but all of our employees enjoy the area, and we're being new to the city. We like to encourage others to go about and see different parts of Oklahoma City, and that's just one area that we like to encourage our employees to get out and move and be healthy.
All right. Thanks very much. Do we have a motion?
Anyone who has not used the walking trail out there is really missing a treat. Because at the far end of the trail, you feel like you're really out in the wilderness.
Really?
Totally
I have not been on it.
It's really a great trail to walk on, and it was designed when it was built to be ADA compliant, so if there's a problem with somebody in a wheelchair, they can handle that walking trail real well.
All right. It is in Ward 8. Pat, you want to make a motion to receive this?
I make a motion to approve it.
All right. Cast your votes. It passed unanimously.
Wonderful.
Thank you again.
Thank you all.
Back to item 8A. This starts a series of zoning cases. The first is in Ward 8. The address is 19601 North Pennsylvania Avenue. It's currently a planned unit development, and it would become an RIZL single-family residential zero lot line district. Pat?
Your Honor, thank you very much. 8A1 and 8A2 are related, and I don't know if this is permissible or not. I'd like to take them as a whole.
Let's do that.
Because initially they were presented to the Planning Commission as a whole project.
Okay.
And if you look at under item 8A2, the little map that comes with it, you can see the relationship of the two projects. The part that is proposed under 8A2 is just to the south of the piece that was proposed under 8A1. So there were some concerns about the R4 apartment project out here, and I think that the applicant's representative is here. Are there any questions from the council about this particular project? David, you might talk a little bit about the number of apartments that would be practical to construct in that R4 area.
Good morning, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. When we initially filed this case, it was one application. The northern portion was for the R1ZL. It was previously zoned duplex. When my client went to apply for his plat on the duplexes, the neighbors to the west protested, and so what he did was come up with an agreement with those neighbors that he would rezone a portion of it to R1ZL, which basically cut the density of this in half, and rezone this portion to R4. This is around 2.2 acres. South of this is all zoned R4. And part of the reason that the neighbors were comfortable with this being R4 is when you look at the site, there's a significant pipeline that runs through it, as well as some street right-of-way. So on the 2.2 acres, really the most you could get is about 24 units. Because along the north and the west side, you can only have one-story buildings because of plane requirements. So because of parking and code requirements, the number of units you could get was 24, so it was greatly reduced. And I believe that was part of the reason Planning Commission recommended approval. And we went and met with the neighbors, and so that's why part of it got split off. And now we're here asking for your approval.
Okay. Is this part of the plan? I'm sorry, Pat. Does this conform with the plan?
Yes,
I think it's density a long way from the core of the city.
Yes, this situation was already zoned duplex, as he said, so they really actually reduced the overall density that could go here with these amendments. So.
Okay, but there's multifamily south of there.
Yes.
Which is not our project. It's a different owner.
Oh, I see. Okay. Pat?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the project.
Okay.
Francis, can we just vote once on both items, or we have to vote them individually?
We have to vote them separately, so I'll take your motion on 8A1.
8A1, I move for approval.
Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. And
8A2, I move for approval.
Cast your votes, and it passed unanimously as well.
Thank you.
David, thank you very much.
Item 8A3 has been deferred until item May 28th. 8A3 deferred previously until May 28th. That puts us on to item 8A4. This is a zoning case in Ward 7. at 5701 Northeast Grand Boulevard. It's currently R1 single family, and it would become a new simplified plan unit development. And John, we have a couple of people that have signed up to speak.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. One quick question before we ask the applicant to come up. This is to staff. What percentage is the protest?
The new percentage is just over 55%. There's 40 legal signatures. That's property owners within 300-foot radius of this property. So it's just over 55%.
Okay, thank you. Can the applicant come up and briefly explain why we should change the zoning?
Roger Everett. I'm attorney for the Joys who own this property. My address is 508 West Vandament, Yukon. The applicants here own nearly a 5-acre triangular-shaped piece of land. It's kind of rural. Their house sits in it, and there are 2 barns. It's wooded. They met with city staff. They also met with quite a number of the neighbors. And what they're asking the council to do is approve the recommendation of the Planning Commission, which approved this, to go from a single residential to the SPUD 701. The Joys feel that their house would be suitable for a limited office type building, a medical office, a dental office. It could also be used as a possible bed and breakfast. The city has put the uses, and when we were at the Planning Commission, we agreed to one change. But as you can see from the map, the closest house to their house is probably at least 100 yards away. Grand Boulevard fronts their property, and that's how they have access to the house. And a potential business like a doctor's office, an emergency care office, or a dentist office, or something of that nature, the access would come in off of Grand Boulevard. There is what I would call a kind of an emergency type access at the corner of Rhode Island. They don't use that, but if there was a fire, the fire department could come in there. But like I said, this area is mostly rural around their property, and for the use which they're asking for to have it rezoned, it certainly would, I think, help the property value of the around for a business to be in that. And
quick question, how many times have this property been up for sale in auction within the last couple of years?
I don't think any. I think since the Joys have purchased the property, I don't think it's been put up for sale.
I do not believe that's correct.
All right. He said it was put up for sale last year.
Good morning. We will need your name and address.
My name is Don Joy, 5701 Northeast Grand Boulevard. We put the property up for sale about a year ago and let our very next door neighbor, who was a realtor, post it up for sale as a residential property. Over time, the people that showed serious interest in buying a property wanted to use it as a business because of the way the property is set up. And they were not willing to buy it until we had rezoned it to something they could use it for. We are surrounded by lots of small lots, 65 foot wide lots on the 2 back sides. It's very secluded. I've let the shrubbery grow for years. We've been there for 15 years, and I've let it grow to offer privacy to my neighbors. And so it's very, very nice for that reason for them.
All right, thank you. You answered my question.
The one other thing I'd like to say, that the reason, if I may, I don't have very good breath because I have a heart condition. So I have to stop in a moment and catch a breath. Our neighborhood, most of the homes were built in the 50, 60 era. And a lot of the people that are there bought them when they were new or bought them recently after. So they've been there for a long, long, long time. And they're now reaching maturity age. The mix in our community is top-heavy with elderly people. A lot of them are raising their grandchildren because the parents have went their own ways. And as these people pass on, their children don't come back. There's no jobs nearby. They have nowhere and no way to come back and take these properties over. So they put them up for rent.
Let me stop you right there. I know this neighborhood very well, and there's not one abandoned house that's in this neighborhood. For as the ownership in this area, the majority of these people are not renters; they property owners. Can we thank you, Mr. Joy and Mr. Everett? We have protesters.
Well, we have two people that have signed up to speak.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question?
Okay, I don't know that Mr. Everett was finished. I mean, if he's signed up to speak, he ought to be able to say what he wants. And we also have Rosalind Paulden has signed up to speak. So, John, which order do you want them to come up?
I'll allow Mr. Everett to finish.
All right.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor and Councilman Pettis. There was no unfavorable recommendations by city staff or the Planning Commission. And when we were at the Planning Commission, the only protest that I heard was people didn't want to change. There was not, we're going to have a traffic problem, we're going to have a lighting problem, we're going to have a noise problem. None of those would take place with the proposed use for their house. Like I said, it's set in kind of a woods, rural area. Those uses normally would be normal business hours. The only thing that I would think that would go in there that would go after like 8 or 5 o'clock, would be some sort of an emergency care, like one of those little Med Plus things. But other than that, it would be a normal type business use. There wouldn't be any traffic issues. There wouldn't be any pollution, lighting, any of those problems.
Can I ask, Mayor, do you have a set use in mind, or you just want to create a SPUD and then see who?
That is correct. The uses have been designated in the Planning Commission report on what those items could be. Like I said, a medical office, a dental office, library services. It could be a possible bed and breakfast. It could be, something of that nature.
Is Russell Klaus here today, or is he?
I don't know. I didn't see Russ in the back room. I don't know if he's available or not.
He was here earlier.
Okay.
Well, let me just ask. I mean, is this? I guess we've had this situation certainly in Ward 2. It's where you create these large commercial parcels in the middle of neighborhoods. I mean, is that an appropriate use of the SPUD to just create a blank check? We don't. The neighborhood doesn't know what use is going in there. The city doesn't know. Then once you do the zoning, then I mean, that's forever. That I guess is the problem I have, is just this, without knowing what the use is and creating such a large parcel right in the middle of a neighborhood.
This parcel is zoned for, or the plan designates it as a traditional neighborhood. So whenever we look at commercial joining an existing neighborhood like this, we try to limit the impacts on the uses that could go there. The Planning Commission recommended that they delete the wedding chapel and the restaurant uses that were proposed. So basically, this is a 01, 02 SPUD, but they didn't have a specific use, so it wasn't tied to that, but it's very limited.
Why not wait till they have a specific use and then approve the zoning for that? And tighten up the SPUD. I don't even know if this is an appropriate use of a SPUD, but tighten up the SPUD to that use.
That's the council's option. I mean, we've done single use or dual use SPUDs and PUDs. It's really a decision of the council to but as a staff, we were comfortable with the recommendation of the limited uses, because those uses are designed to have limited impact on those existing residential uses.
But you could put a 5-acre emergency medical center on this.
They had limitations on their paved parking, but that is a use that's allowed.
And Councilman Shadid, if I might address that, and it's not like they could build some giant building on this deal, but this house, and I think they've limited it to 5,000 square feet, so it's not going to be anything giant. It would just be kind of like the house if a doctor or dentist bought it, knock out a few walls, and there's his office.
But the purpose of a SPUD, although we don't say this very often, the whole purpose is contract zoning. I mean, that's the whole reason to do a SPUD. You take our zoning ordinances and then you start to carve away at them so you get something that's acceptable. So I think it probably is appropriate to use a SPUD there. I just wonder if you fully utilized the tools that you have in a SPUD to try to make this where it's more acceptable to the neighborhood. I mean, you could, for example, you could guarantee what's going to go all around the side of it that borders the the housing, the residential housing. You could have a setback. You could guarantee to maintain green space there. There are a lot of things you could do in a SPUD that don't appear to me to be in this one.
And they have agreed that they're going to keep the trees and the way the thing is.
But is nothing...
I didn't see that when I read the...
Thank you.
It's in the Planning Commission that they agreed to keep the trees and the...
yeah. Okay, well, it is a good use for a SPUD, in my opinion. I mean, but whether or not you could tweak the SPUD in order to make, if you find out the objection is to the A or B or C, a SPUD is an opportunity to tweak it so that you don't have that in there. So I wouldn't want us to leave us with the idea that a SPUD is not an appropriate way to do this kind of thing, because rather than just coming in and asking for 01 or 02 where you've got just a whole litany of things that might go in there, SPUD's a better, when you have some pushback from the neighborhood, a SPUD's a better thing than that, I think.
Yeah.
It just may be that this one doesn't quite meet what the neighborhood would like.
You mentioned that the property was placed up for sale. It was placed up for sale with the current zoning, and so it would have had to have been R1?
That is correct.
And the attempted sale was unsuccessful?
That's right.
So now there's an attempt to try and change the zoning to see if perhaps it would be more marketable?
That is correct.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Everett? And we'll bring up somebody else.
That's all.
Okay, thanks. Rosalind Paulden? Good morning, and Rosalind, we will need for you to state your name and address for the record, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rosalind Paulden. I live at 5824 North Rhode Island, and my property backs right up to the spoken of property that we're talking about here. The problem that the neighborhood is having is really not clear what they want to do, so that's kind of put us in a bad place. And the application that was filed with the city of Oklahoma City was filed before we had any knowledge that they wanted to do something like this. Now, they've stated that they've talked to us, and we didn't have the proper notification. So after much discussion and consideration of what this zoning could possibly cause to the neighborhood, to the entire neighborhood, not just that 300 feet radius. We, the concerned neighbors of Park Estate, North Cashion, Wildwood neighborhood, we want this to remain as strictly a residential neighborhood. Number one being, we don't know what they're going to do. And so we just rather it stay that way. Many of the residents that live in the neighborhood have been there for some 40 plus years. They are elderly. They're not dying. They are elderly. They have raised their children in this neighborhood. They're established in this neighborhood. You know, most of them now are on fixed incomes because they've either lost a mate, you know, the man or the woman. So it's just a big problem, you know, with their homes being established. They've kept them up. We have an active neighborhood association, which we meet regularly to maintain that neighborhood, to make sure that it stays clean, it's safe. We have children there. It's not like there's just older people there. There are some that are established, but there's a lot of young people in there, a lot of property owners. And we are there because we want to be there. And we want this neighborhood to stay safe. You know, for our children, we have a walking trail over there. If we get a business there, people use that trail all the time. That could be a problem. They're concerned about the traffic and the additional noise coming in. And I'm just speaking for them. But I think we all have a consensus that we don't want it to change. We like our neighborhood to stay good. We have done a petition. We've done the legwork. We've got out and talked to the neighbors to see what they wanted. And we have a total of 180 signatures for the entire neighborhood. But now in that 300-foot radius, we have 55.78 signatures. So we have done our work to ensure that we keep our neighborhood safe. So it's just the desire of the neighborhood that we stay a neighborhood. You know, we're there because we want to be.
Right.
We need a place to live, and we want it to stay as safe as possible. We're not against them selling the property, but not only has it been up for sale, it has been up for auction, and it didn't work as a residential. Who's to say once we set this zoning in, which I understand if it's set as an R1, then it's done for good. And we don't know what's going to come in there. And I know we can come back if something comes in there that we don't want to. We're well aware of that fact. But like I said, we've got elderly people, we've got young people that work. Trying to be here at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday morning is almost impossible to, you know, get people out because they're working to maintain their property. So it is our desire that the neighborhood stays strictly residential.
All right. Thank you for coming down. All right. John, do you have a motion?
I move to deny SPUD 701.
All right. So a yes vote is to deny the application, and I'll remind the council, because the zoning protest exceeded 50%, it would require 7 votes to approve, but this is a motion to deny.
That's correct.
Regardless, so it would just take a majority? Okay.
Mayor, I'm going to second the motion for the purpose of further discussion and to move it forward. I understand the neighborhood's concern, but you have to recognize that you don't own that property. I mean, if you want to use it for a walking trail, maybe they ought to be charging you to use it for a walking trail. It's not yours to use that way. I mean, time changes things. That property's been there. It's not developed as R1. I'm going to vote for it because your councilman is asking us to. But I will tell you, it's very reluctantly that I do that because I do not believe that you can say, I want it to stay the way it is, and that's not really, in my opinion, a valid reason. You need to buy it if that's your attitude. You need to own it. The idea that you can just say it ought to be R1 when they've tried to sell it and no buyer came forward to build single-family houses there, they should have an opportunity to use the property in some way. Now, as I said earlier, I think they could have done a better job with the SPUD. I think it is not as narrow as it should have been. I think probably a meeting with you to say which uses would you tolerate that might be in order. But I'm going to vote for it because your councilman is opposed to it. But I will tell you, it's very reluctant on my part because I'm not convinced that your reason for opposing it is based on what I see the standard that we've typically applied to zoning cases.
All right.
Mayor, if I could just point out as well, Pete, with regard to it not being narrow enough, on page 11, it does say that the comprehensive plan supports the reuse of existing buildings, which is what they intend to do, preserving mature trees and reduce parking requirements for commercial uses. The proposed development intends to occupy the existing building and preserve the trees on site. So they did include that as part of the document. So it is tighter than it might appear.
All right, Larry?
Question to Bob, if you could come forward. See if I understand this right. There are 9 uses that are listed here.
Yeah, yes, 9 use units.
Use units.
There's multiple uses in each use unit, but
Okay.
those are the.
And if I have an objection to one or more of those use units, I could strike those use units from the list.
Yes, and you could go as far as striking specific uses that would be allowed in one of those units if you wanted to.
Okay, and now if we turn this down, and I have these 4.8 acres zoned as R1, I could come back without any zoning case and put in multiple houses on that property, plat that for multiple houses. Is that a possibility?
You'd have to do a plat, probably a minor plat, but you could do 6,000 square foot lots on that property.
And so I could do X number of houses in there.
Yes.
One of the things that was taken off the list was a wedding chapel. On the current zoning, should I want to come in there and put in a large church facility, could I do that?
Churches are a use allowed in the R1 district.
That's what I
Their
thought.
intent was to use, I think there's a 103-year-old barn on the site, and that's what they wanted to use as the wedding chapel. But yes, the R1 allows neighborhood-related uses, and the church is one of those.
So I might end up with something more derogatory, more against the neighborhood remaining, the rest of the houses. If I don't approve this, I could end up with something that the neighbors would find even more objectionable. That's a possibility.
Well, there are uses that would be different than just straight single family, and they could be objectionable.
Okay. Ed?
What I heard the applicant say was that they were having trouble selling it without the zoning being in place first. There would be nothing we're not saying today if we vote against this that they can't ever do this. We're just saying we're not comfortable with a blank check that doesn't define the use that would last forever. So there would be nothing to prevent them, would it not, to have a contract with a buyer, have a set use, to have a SPUD that very clearly outlines that use, and then, as Pete was talking about, talks about how you maybe have how you interface with the neighborhood. There'd be nothing to prevent them from coming back with a much more defined SPUD in the future, correct?
That's correct.
So I think what's happened in my ward, and I think what the problem I have with the use of the SPUD is using it as a blank check that lasts forever to help people increase the sellability without having a defined use. And then that's the problem I have with it. Thank you.
Well, it doesn't last forever. It lasts until somebody comes in with an application to change it.
But what if it's
zoning doesn't last forever? It lasts as long as the owners want it to be zoned that way. And so if it was...
But within the uses of the SPUD?
No. I mean, well, if it's limited like this one is, to specific uses, that's true. But as long as it's zoned this way. Now, a new owner could come in and rezone it and put some additional uses in, or ask for permission to put some additional uses. And that would change the intent of the application.
All right. Turn your mic on.
Zoning is kind of like the decisions we make. They're good for a week. I mean, if we could come back, well, I mean, literally, we could come back the next week and change it. Isn't that your point?
Exactly, yeah.
Is that it's not set in concrete. It's not set in concrete. They could file another application tomorrow and start all over again, and here we go, you know. Anyway,
may I ask how much dialogue there's been with the neighborhood? Because one possibility here, I mean, I think Pete's comments are really correct that change happens. You know, we can't stop change. And this is a substantially, I mean, it's a substantial size. It's a large piece of property that could, if done well.
Rosalind, you want to come back to the microphone and address Councilwoman Sawyer's question, if you don't mind?
So, you know, I'm just saying, if this were done well, it could be a win-win for both the neighborhood and for the property owners. And so I'm wondering if instead of voting to deny today, that perhaps we defer this and ask you all to sit down. I don't mean to be putting words in your mouth. I'm making a suggestion, John, that maybe we defer and ask you all to sit down and talk about some of those more narrow uses and what your real concerns are.
You know what, that might be a possibility, and I'm speaking for them and they're behind me. One of our concerns was the property was up for sale for quite some time, and it has been on more than one occasion. What we looked at was what the property was scheduled to sell for. Now, when you look at the properties in that neighborhood, nothing's going to sell as a residential in what they were asking for the property. I think originally we just asked that they lower the property value. It could sell as a residential.
Well, that's a little hard to,
and
I mean,
yeah,
again,
I know.
you don't own the property.
Economic, so we can't tell them, but
right.
That is something that we, you know, we kind of looked at, and it's just so vague as to what could happen and the energy that it would take to make sure it's zoned. Now, this gentleman here is saying, Mr. Ryan, that it's not permanent, and maybe that's my mistake, but I understood that the zoning, once it's done, is permanent, and we can't change it.
It's permanent
till somebody else comes in.
So it makes an application to change it.
Okay, you bring a different light to it.
Nothing's written in stone.
Okay, so if it goes to commercial, we can come back and change it back to residential. Is that what you're saying?
Not unless you
but within that, we can stay.
Not unless you own the property.
Not unless we own the property.
The property owner has that right and responsibility to proceed with zoning changes.
Okay.
The city can't come in unilaterally change zoning. Somebody who's adjacent to the property can't come in unless the neighborhood decided to buy the property and make a park out of it or keep it to R1.
Okay, park sounds good. You know, it was mentioned earlier about the trees in the neighborhood and how they'd been grown up to, you know, protect the neighborhood and make it private. Trees die. And the barn that I hear about on the property, I don't know that it's ever been used. You know, it's just so vague for the neighborhood. My concern and our concern is for the safety and the well-being of our neighborhood. You know, and I do get that change has to come. We are on board with that. But you know, this just needs to be tightened up a bit. This is way too vague.
Well, how many uses would you think would be tightened up? I mean,
beg your pardon?
If the SPUD listed uses, how many would you consider appropriate to go forward?
You know, now that's something I have to sit down and talk to the neighborhood about without me.
Well, that may be the opportunity.
So you may be correct that some more discussion needs to be done on this with us and the Joyce, because we've not had that dialogue that's saying, you know, this can happen and that can happen, and the well-being of us all.
Because the SPUD as it's presented limits the uses. Now, if there are additional limitations that you want to put in there, perhaps a discussion with the developer or his attorney would result in the limitation of additional uses, or the removal of existing, you know, of some of these uses. That's something that I think Councilman Salyer suggested, that it might be beneficial to defer this for 2 weeks and let you and the developer, the owners sit down and decide what kind of uses that, you know, that you all would accept without protest, and let them go forward on that basis.
You know, that would be possible. The last thing that I got was, we don't want it, based on the signatures and the discussions that we've had in the neighborhood. So that's what I'm presenting, what they said. They don't want it.
No, I hear you very clearly.
Yeah, yeah. They don't want it, so they're not open for
penetration of the
discussion.
message. They don't want this to change.
They don't want it.
I understand that.
Okay.
But just because they don't want it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. But we do things at this horseshoe all the time with people who don't want something to happen. And we have to balance what these people are concerned about with the right of a person who owns property to develop the way he wants.
I know, but that's the negotiation between them, really.
Well, it's ultimately our responsibility to decide that.
Well, yeah, I think we've passed along to them that, you know, long term, you know, the property owner does have some rights here, and
right.
And you know,
we understand.
And the uses on Grand Boulevard have changed through the years.
We've had a number of these kind of developments in Ward 8. small little offices, one-story offices, and they make excellent buffers for a high-traffic avenue. I don't know what Grand Boulevard looks like out here, but along May Avenue, we've got a number of these, Pennsylvania, Western, every north-south street that carries lots of traffic has some of these kind of facilities, one-story little office places. And the uses are generally limited, but not totally just a single-use kind of thing.
Here's the way I see it. Until there is a proposed buyer or current owner who has a specific use in mind, the neighborhood's not likely to consider anything that's very broad.
No.
And this is too broad, and I don't know how much you could tighten it unless you have someone who has a plan, who has a business plan, you know, that's something they're going to do where they could consider it. I mean, I think they're organized, and they've got their council person on their side, and they're well positioned to have some leverage here.
Sir, there is plenty of commercial property on the other side of Martin Luther King. That grand right there protects our neighborhood.
And it does protect it. In this particular neighborhood, we have Remington Park, we have the zoo. What separates those entities is Grand Boulevard.
Right.
It's Grand Boulevard. That's the only safe haven for this particular neighborhood. You go down Martin Luther King, we have to deal with all the traffic. You go down 50th, have to deal with all that traffic. So Grand is the safe haven for this neighborhood for its traffic. Because you look from Martin Luther King to I-44, Grand, it's quiet.
Okay. Well, we have a motion on the table and a second, so I think we ought to vote on the denial. Council have a problem with voting on the denial? All right, it'll take a majority vote to deny the application. Cast your votes. And the motion is denied, 8-1. Thank you all. We're on to item 8B. This has 2 points to it. It's also in Ward 7. The address is 700 Northeast 122nd Street. It's currently a plan unit development, and it would become a new PUD. John?
Sure. Now, this is the boxes, correct? You represent the applicant. Now, this was a case where the, I'm sorry, is this the right? This is the Links project, right? Okay. Now, this is a case where it was protest, and the protesters and the developer worked out a solution. So I am grateful to the protesters as well as the developer for working out the issues. Now, are there any additional protesters?
Has anyone signed up to speak? No one has signed up to speak.
And I do believe a couple of the protesters are here in support of this application, correct?
David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. Councilman, that is correct. Mr. Ruffin is here. He previously entered protest, but as of yesterday and this morning, he and I believe the rest of the folks that were protesting with him have withdrawn their protest, and I'm happy to go through the changes we've made if you'd like.
Quickly go through the changes that were made. But again, this is one example of the developer and the neighborhood and the developers working things out.
Yeah, at Planning Commission, the site you see before us is roughly right at 122nd and Kelly, and we had 3 separate commercial tracts within this PUD. We had a tract on the east, a tract on the west, and then a tract that was centered right here. Planning Commission did recommend approval, but subsequent to that, we went back and met with the protesters. We were able to come up to a solution where we have the commercial tract here, we slid the commercial tract over here to allow a proposed development north of us to happen, and then we deleted the tract on the west but maintained enough of a buffer with our apartment buildings that the neighbor to the west was still satisfied. So with the change we made to our site plan and the PUD, the neighbors and the protesters have now withdrawn their protest, and I believe Mr. Ruffin's here if anyone had any questions of him.
Again, I do want to thank the protesters and the applicant for working things out. I move for approval.
Second.
All right, any more comments or questions on this item? It's item 8B. Now, do we need to vote on the amendment? Okay, John, why don't you make your motion on the amendment, item 8B1?
I move to approve with the amendment.
We have to vote on them separately.
Okay,
So
I'm
we
sorry.
have to vote on the amendment first.
Okay, I move to approve the amendment.
Okay?
Thank you.
Cast your votes on the amendment, and it passes unanimously. Then my 8B2 is the actual ordinance.
I move.
And
for
again,
approval.
this will require 7 votes because the protest is higher than 50%. Cast your votes, and it passed unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, we're on to item 8C, and there has been a request to strike this item. Is that correct? All right, so we move on to item 8D. We're back in the zoning business. This is in Ward 4 at 14501 South Sooner Road. It's currently AA agricultural, and it would become a planned unit development. Pete?
There are a number of people, I'm sure, that are here to talk about this. I've received a lot of phone calls.
Well, 2 people have signed up to speak, just so you'll know.
I've talked to the applicant, and I'm going to move to deny this. If anybody that wants to talk in regard after that, hearing that, well, they're fine to talk. But those that are protesting, I'm not sure you can get more than a motion for me to deny no matter how long you talk. So if the applicant wants to make a presentation, he's certainly welcome to do that. But I want to tell you right ahead of time that I'm going to move to deny this one. I think this is premature. I think it's caught in a lot of things. There's a traffic problem there. I think it's dense for the neighborhood. I've wrestled with it because, in the earlier case, I recognize that time changes things, and there are other developments that have gone in the proximity of this that are very similar. I think the line has been crossed in this area. A number of things have changed. We quote the plan constantly. You would think if you read the plan literally, you would never build another house in southeast Oklahoma City unless it was on a 5-acre tract. I mean, and I don't think that was my intention when we did the plan, but that's the way planning now interprets the plan, is if you're not on a 5-acre tract and you're in southeast Oklahoma City, you're out of luck. But all that being said, I'm going to move to deny it. But if the applicant would like to make a presentation and see if he convinced 5 of the others to go along with it. I really hate it because this applicant has worked very hard to try to make this work, made concessions consistently. There's water there now that wasn't there when the plan was put into effect. But I still am convinced that it's just not appropriate. So have at it, Mr. Box.
Thank you, Councilman. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. Also with me is Dusty Boren, who is the applicant, and Kendall Dillon. As the councilman said, this is a case that's gone on for a while. This case started with 68 duplex lots, and we've gone through a series of changes, and we're now down to 60 lots that are for single family. And what we've done is we've changed it numerous times to try to appease the various neighbors that are out there. Our density now is less than the development immediately south of us that was just recently approved by this council within the last 2 or 3 months. What we've done is we've now made all the lots on the northern side a minimum of 1 acre. We deleted lots on the west so that there's now only 2 lots that border the people that live there west of us. One of the big issues when you look at the densities in this area, they're starting to change. And the big reason that they're starting to change is because these developments are now served with public water. And so your traditional 5-acre lots are starting to become developments like this, because once the public water is there, more density becomes appropriate. I think it's important to look at the various densities around us. Now, if you can see the yellow, that's the subject site. The areas outlined in red are areas that are served by water, and so what you see is more density. And what you also see is these developments are larger than ours, but have similar lot sizes. Immediately east of Sooner is a development called Pepperwell. Our density is less than that. I believe that allows 100 lots, and they're minimum half acre. Here, south and east is a development that has more lots, more acreage, and more density. So when you look at overall in the area, our application is consistent with the surrounding densities. It's less dense than an application that was just approved that actually abuts our property. It's on Sooner, which is the state highway, which has a lot of traffic, which that combined with the water promotes more density. And one of the other big issues we faced was there was concern about traffic on Sooner. So what we've done is we've worked with the gentleman that's developing the lots to the south, and we now, as you can see, connect through that development to the south so that we now have 2 points of access, one on Sooner and then one on 149th. Within the last 2 months, the Traffic Commission has lowered the speed limit on 149th now that you have some of these more developments coming in. So we feel when you look at the total densities in the area and you look at the fact that water is now available, we feel our application is conformance with recently approved developments. It's appropriate for the area, and we understand there has been a motion for denial, but we would ask for your support. And I'm here to answer any questions.
What school district is this in? Is this Moore or Norman?
More.
More.
Okay.
Actually, my concern is that it's more that it's premature than it is than I have problems with it. It's a little too dense still, but 149th is just not built to handle this much traffic. We're going to build a fire station out there in the next 2 or 3 years. That'll change response times dramatically. I hope to be able to do more at 149th and get it built, get it altered. But if you bring it back again, I would expect it to be less dense than it is. I just think that when you get lots, those interior lots being the smallest they are just going to be add density that I just can't support. I feel bad about it because I've hoped that we could modify it to the point where I could feel good about it, but I don't.
And it's the density that bothers you? The density that bothers
you? The density, and I think at some point, when you start to do these things, you overload the services that are out there. And we don't have a close fire station. The next fire station to be built is going to be in that general area, and that will change things a little bit. There's work going on 149th, which will make that better, I think, over the next few years. And those other developments are going to come online that are already approved, and they're adding. Well, I think it's just time to kind of take a breath and see.
Pete, you know how long it'll take us to develop?
Say it again.
Do you know how long it would take this particular subdivision to develop and cause the kind of problem?
I don't have any idea. Probably, hopefully it won't develop like Pepperwell did. I mean, it'll start and finish but I would imagine a couple of years.
So the total development might be ready at the same time your fire station is ready?
It's possible.
And 149th?
Possible. In fact, I doubt that the fire station will be there 2 years from now. But
Pete,
I just think there's a lot of gone on in that area, and the water is obviously a magnet for development. I mean, it makes it simpler, it makes it more economical, it makes it less environmentally impactive. But I want to take a breath and see what happens.
All right, David.
Pete, since you've recommended this to be denied, I would, if you need a second, I'll second it and support that. But yet, I will have to say that I think Mr. Box made a strong presentation as to why it should be approved, especially when you compare it with the other developments in the area. It's less dense, but again, you have a much better understanding of the area than I do, and I would support that position at this point in time. I will say this. Since we do neighbor each other, Ward 4 and 5, we basically are out of space that is available to develop in Ward 5. People I think, who want to stay in South Oklahoma City are looking more and more to Ward 4 for their development, and it's just the demand will continue to grow, Pete, I believe.
No,
So-
I'm aware of that. And that's, if you look at everything that's happened in the last 3 or 4 years, I think it's an indication of the truth of what you're saying exactly, because that is happening. There is pressure starting to move east. The big difference is that we don't have the roads, the streets qualities that they have in Southwest, and we still have lots of people living on 40s and 80s, and so there is some of that everybody always wants it to be like it is. I mean, one thing I learned when I moved out there was that most of my neighbors expected me to be the last person to move in southeast Oklahoma City. They didn't want anybody else out there, you know. And then every time anybody moves in, they think that about that guy. So it's and things do change. I just with all that's gone on around it, I want to take a breath, and I just. I appreciate the job you did, Mr. Box, and I appreciate the willingness to work on part of your clients. I just can't bring myself to vote for it.
All right, so you're making a motion to deny on item 8D1. We have a second. We have 2 people that have signed up to speak. I believe that both of them would be on the side of the denial, in which case I don't know it's necessary for you to speak, but you've signed up, and I'm willing to allow it if you'd like. I don't need to speak. I think that's a smart tactic right now. All right. Cast your votes, and that item is denied. All right, item 8D2 is another issue in Ward 4. The address is 17835 South Midwest Boulevard. It's currently a AA agricultural area and an AE2 Airport Environ Zone 2 district, and it would become a new plan unit development. Pete?
Actually, my intent today was to move to deny this also. And in fact, I told a protestant that called me over the weekend that's what I was going to do. But when I contacted the developer and told them that I had planned to do that since I'd worked with them all along, they made an additional proposal today to reduce the density substantially from what it is now. And I think they're going to ask for, if you want to come up, I think they're going to ask for continuance to review the possibility of reducing the density substantially.
That's correct. What we'd like is to continue this a month. Currently, this proposal calls for a minimum of 1 acre lots. What my client would like to do is go back and reconfigure it with the engineer at a minimum of 2 acre lots. This will be served by public water as well, but we need some time to lay it out and resubmit to staff, and then we'd like to meet with the neighbors as well. So if the council was willing, we'd like to continue this a month to see if we can't reduce the density and maybe come to an agreement with the neighbors.
Okay, well, sounds like a proactive step. We do have 2 people that have signed up to speak. Right. Let's see if they want to speak regardless. Gwen Allen? Morning, Gwen, and we will need your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Gwen Allen. I live directly across the street from this at 17624 Midwest Boulevard. Even 2 acre lots would be too dense. If you look at the surrounding area, the homes are on 5, 10, 15, and 40 acre lots, all surrounding. This is on the very edge of Oklahoma City limits. Indian Hills, Norman dividing line. Even 2 acre lots are going to be too dense. We don't have the infrastructure in place. The nearest fire station is 10 miles away. The roads are awful. Parts of the roads on Midwest Boulevard and the bridge on Indian Hills are not passable for 2 cars. You've got to wait for the other car to get by before you can pass in those areas. So when you go in and you put in this type of development, that's just going to increase the traffic exponentially. 2 acre, I just think 2 acre lots are going to be too dense.
All right, thanks for coming down.
Can I ask you a question? Where do you do the bulk of your shopping? And where do you think the people that live in this area do the bulk of their shopping?
Their shopping's going to be in Norman and in Moore. That's where their tax dollars are going to be. Because, you know, the nearest shopping, if you go this way, is Moore. If you go that way, 7 miles, same distance, is Norman. So that's where the tax dollars are going to go. They're not going to go to Oklahoma City. So if you're counting on those tax dollars to pay for your infrastructure changes, those aren't going to be there. They're going to be in Norman and Moore.
Right. Actually, this is the only state in America that property tax doesn't go to paying for general fund. So it is the sales tax that's paying for fire, police, water,
Right.
the services. So
Right.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right.
Any other
Sean
questions?
O'Brien?
Good morning. My name is Sean O'Brien. I live at 5651 36th Avenue Northeast, which is the Norman side of this property. And I'll be very, very quick. I just want the council, if you can, just get an idea of the kind of property that we're talking about. And you start talking about 2-acre lots. There is nothing surrounding, even close to this, where there is any density. And in our neighborhoods, I mean, once again, as Gwen mentioned, the majority of people are on 5, 10, 15, I'm on 40 acres at the corner down here. There's just, the infrastructure is not there. And I'm not opposed to development. I fully recognize I live close to a metropolitan city. It's going to happen. But to try to put this kind of a development out in a highly agricultural area, a couple other things just for the council to see. This is the property. The red are the neighbors who have all signed a petition not to allow this development. These are all 5-acre lots. It's just, it doesn't fit. And I understand that it's going to come to some extent, but one quick example, just so you can see, I know this is kind of crazy, this is the road. This is the 1-lane bridge on Indian Hills Road, which is one of the only ways to get there. You can't get 2 vehicles across this bridge.
That's an excellent illustration of what you're trying to show.
At the same time.
I applaud you for bringing that in to show us.
We're just not ready for it. And even at 2 acres, when you start talking about putting 80, 90 homes, and you start talking about the traffic that's going to develop, we're not septic. We don't have water there. I know the developers talked about bringing water in there, but I don't think we're ready for it out there. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks, Sean. Pete, have you made a motion? Your motion to defer?
How long a continuance would you need to take one more try?
At least a month.
What do you think, Francis? Francis is pulling out her calendar.
June the 11th is 4 weeks.
4 weeks from today? Okay.
Is that good enough?
Yes.
In the meantime, you'll have schedule a meeting with the people that live there and take another shot at that?
Yes, we will.
Because I think their points are well taken. As I told you, I drove that whole thing this weekend, and you know, the change that water brings is something that is just, it makes a difference. It makes a difference. I talked to someone that's very familiar with that area, that's a well driller, and he was very concerned about the number of holes we're punching in the ground for water, as am I. But when you bring water, you change that, you take that off the table. So I'm willing at least to take another look at it. Although this one's got problems, but the one we just denied, some of the problems that this one has are worse. The things you're changing in this one is you're decreasing the density from what the other one was. So, decreasing the density. So if you want to, I'd move for a 4-week continuance, and I'll be glad to go and listen. If you have a neighborhood meeting, I don't want to speak, but I certainly would go and listen and try to hear what everybody has.
And David, what school district is this to? Is this Moore or Norman?
Moore.
Okay, just wondering. Okay. You can't talk from the audience. If you want to talk, you'll have to come up, but I was just...
I know a little bit about the school. It's Robin Hill, it's in a dependent school district, Robin Hill. But the reason that Robin Hill is such a poor school is because there is no development around Robin Hill. If you look at the developments, if you look at the dependent districts that have survived, they have development around it. Oakdale is probably the best example I know of. It's a dependent district and it's surviving and thriving, and because it does have development, because the taxes that are paid by the homeowner go to run the schools. And so you look at, so the school district in this case, they would profit substantially by this development.
Okay. Motion is to defer for 4 weeks. Do we have a second? Second. All right. Comments or questions from council? All right. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Item 8E is a public hearing regarding weight restrictions at Lake Atoka. It is a public hearing. Has anyone shown up today to speak on item 8E? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8F is a public hearing regarding dilapidated structures. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under 8F? All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8G is a public hearing regarding unsecured structures. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 8G? All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes, and it passes unanimously. On to item 8H, which is several events that are going to be held in Oklahoma City. We'll start with item 8H1. It's an event in Ward 6 called the Oklahoma City Pro-Am Classic. Is there anyone here representing this event? Chad?
I see Chad in the audience.
Good morning, Chad.
Good morning.
And so this is actually for item 8H1 and 2, is it not?
Yes, sir. This
Okay,
year,
why don't you go ahead and tell us about both of them while you're here.
Okay, we're a two-day cycling event with day one being held in Automobile Alley and day two in the Film Row District.
And what type of cycling is this?
It's called criterium-based cycling. It's basically the F1 of bicycle racing, where we basically, the course is a closed-off course, about 0.8 of a mile, and you kind of zigzag through the city streets.
Really?
Yes, sir.
And that'll be on our city streets?
What's that?
On our city streets?
Yes.
Sound like a Grand Prix with bicycles.
You bet, just like it.
I love that.
And actually, it's really exciting, Mayor. Last
Yeah,
year,
that
this
is
was
cool.
just a one-day event.
All right.
And it's morphed into two this year, and I think Chad's hoping at some point to take it to a three-day.
Yeah, that's the hope. Hopefully, we'll take Friday night next year.
All right. Anyone here wishing to speak against this? Okay.
Make a motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. We will have to take these separately, so I'll take the motion for item 8H1 and cast your votes. It passed unanimously. Meg, on item 8H2?
I'd make a motion to approve.
Cast your votes, and it passed unanimously as well.
Thanks, Chad.
Chad, good luck.
Thank you.
All right. On to item 8H3, Kathy's on Paseo, asking to hold the Kathy's Market on Paseo, May 25th through the 27th. Good morning.
My name is Kathy Jacobson, and I reside at 301 Northwest 19th here in Oklahoma City. I'm the sponsor for the Kathy's Market on Paseo, which is May the 25th through the 27th. I became part of the Paseo Art District 14 years ago, a colorful community filled with a variety of people. I'm thrilled to be a part of an event which caters to everyone in our community. The Paseo leadership is a diverse group of personalities, but do share a common vision. A very special thanks to the City of Oklahoma City, the City Council, and staff, especially Josh Ryan, for allowing us to host such a great event. Thank you also to Colin Rosebrook and Jennifer Barron and Mark Hatcher from the Paseo Artists Association for facilitating traffic flow and keeping the lines of communication open. Thank you.
How about a motion on item 8H3? All right. Anybody here wishing to speak on this item other than Kathy? And yeah, Kathy's the only one who signed up to speak. All right, cast your votes. It passed unanimously. Thanks. Item 8A4 is a request from Limbs for Life Foundation to hold the Blaze 5K in Ward 6 and 7. And Josh Delosier is here. Morning, Josh. Good morning. Hey.
My name's Josh Delozier, 10900 Rock Ridge Road, and I am excited to tell you that Limbs for Life is bringing our Blaze 5K back into Bricktown. It's previously been there, and we've moved it off-site for a couple of years and now bringing it back. We're hosting it at the Boathouse and running into Bricktown and then back into the Boathouse District. And we're partnering with the VA this year for their Welcome Home celebration for the servicemen serving in Afghanistan and Iraq. And so it's going to be a very patriotic event and hopefully bring in about 1,000 runners to our event. So,
great. Glad to hear it. Any comments or questions here? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Thanks, Josh. Item 8H, 5, 6, and 7 are from OKC Pride, Inc. to hold a series of events. Jeremy Kreitz is here. Jeremy, good morning.
Good morning.
Why don't we go ahead and hear about all three of these events at once, even though we'll have to vote on them separately.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right, my name is Jeremy Kreitz, and I reside at 6806 Northwest 63rd Terrace here in Oklahoma City. And first off, I represent the LGBT community here in Oklahoma City. That is the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community. I think we all know that the nation and this city in particular has not always been a welcoming place for our group of minorities and others, but I am very pleased with the progress that we've made in the past and the relationships that we've built with the city. And I believe that this is a great opportunity for our city to come together. I believe that ignorance leads to fear, and fear is an impediment to a culture of living together peacefully with respect and tolerance. And so we're here to celebrate our identities, our sense of self, and to celebrate the diversity that is Oklahoma City. And we are all proud to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, the first item is in Ward 6. Meg, you want to make a motion? All right, comments or questions on item 8H5? Cast your votes. It passed unanimously. Item 8H6 is in Ward 2. Ed, you want to make the motion here? Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8H7 is also in Ward 2. Ed? Second? Cast your votes. And it passed unanimously. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Item 8H is for the Oklahoma City Community College to host the OCCC Super Sprint Triathlon. This event is in Ward 5. Is anyone here representing this organization? Come on up.
Your Honor, this is once a year type of activity we have in Ward 5. We don't have as many events as the others, so I'm really excited to have Mr. Bloomberg speak about it.
We will need your name and address for the record, please.
Stephen Bloomberg, 1277 Willow Drive, Choctaw, Oklahoma. Mayor, thank you. Members of the council, we are requesting a revocable permit for the 19th annual Super Sprint Triathlon. We have approximately 250 participants who take place in this. So this year we have a 5K run, a 12-mile bike race, and a 500-meter swim. We are respectfully requesting from the city lane closure starting at 6 a.m. until approximately 12:30 p.m. on June 8th. They will be on May Avenue to Southwest 104th Street. We're looking forward to another great triathlon this year. And again, we always appreciate the support of Oklahoma City in this event. And happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Any questions? Yeah, Larry?
Can we condition this on your participation?
Yes. Councilman Magazine, we can.
All right, it's in Ward 5. David, you want to make a motion?
Yes, move the item.
Cast your votes. Passed unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Item 8H9 is a request from the Paseo Arts Association to hold the Paseo Arts Festival May 25th through the 27th. Come on forward. Is this Memorial Day weekend?
Yes, it is Memorial Day weekend. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Barron. I am at 3828 Northwest 18th Street. And thank you all very much for your time this morning. I would like to invite you all to attend the 37th Annual Paseo Arts Festival that will take place this Memorial Day weekend, May 25th, 26th, and 27th. We have more than 80 visual artists that were accepted through a competitive jury process from around the nation. We will have 57 performers on 2 stages. We will have a handful of food vendors as well, some free arts activities for youth. And all of this is set against the backdrop of the colorful, distinctive, historic Paseo district. So it's going to be a great time for all, and I hope to see you there.
All right, great. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. It passed unanimously.
Mayor, if I could, I'd just like to recognize Joy Belt, who's in the audience as well. Joy's an artist and has a beautiful gallery in the Paseo and has worked on this event, I think, for all 37 years. So thank you, Joy, for being here today.
Item 8I is a request for a revocable permit. The organization is New Leash on Life, and they hope to hold a 5K run and 3K dog jog in Wiley Post Park and then around several parts of the city throughout wards 4, 6, and 7. Is there anyone here representing this organization's request? All right. Well, Pete, part of it's in Ward 4. You want to make the motion? All right. Cast your votes. And it passed unanimously. Item 8J has already been approved. Item 8K is a fire department issue, and I think Chief Bryant's going to lead us through a proposal here.
Supposed to be here. This is an item that we had regarding an issue on the callback provision, and Chief Bryant has negotiated, I think, a good resolution with Phil Sipe and the IFF, who I see is here in the audience. And here's the chief.
Morning. Just very briefly, this resolution before you this morning is approving an addition to our current staffing policy that we negotiated with the firefighters union about 2 years ago. Part of that agreement when we negotiated that policy was that we immediately start negotiating a callback portion of that policy. So over the last couple of years, President Sipe and I have negotiated that policy and got it to where we both believe where we like it and it'll work for us. So again, this is not a new policy. This is not a new article of the contract. It is merely just an addition to our current staffing policy that gives us, the Fire Department Administration, another option to use to maintain minimum staffing at all of our fire stations and all of our fire apparatus in the event that because people are using their time off, people are sick, injured, whatever, that if any of those conditions would cause us to fall below minimum staffing levels, as we've agreed to, that we employ this callback portion. It really establishes just a procedure for doing that. We've had to actually do that a few times over the last couple of years. It doesn't happen very often, but we just don't have a procedure for doing that. So it was somewhat arbitrary on our part as far as who we called back and had returned to duty. We usually worked at the station where we had the staffing issue, but this will establish basically a roster of our members that would be eligible to be called back to duty if it's necessary.
All right, comments or questions for Chief Bryant? All right, how about a motion then on this resolution? Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Item 8L has to do with the parking garage that we're currently constructing, and this is the issuance of debt. Is there a motion? Okay. Craig wants to tell us more about it.
Yes. This item, there was actually a similar item brought to the council on March 5th and approved by the council. The only change that we're making here, it's identical to the one that was approved on March 5th, and the only change here is to formalize the support agreement from the city. Previously, we were going to take this by itself, so it didn't have a support agreement. It would stand on its own. After working through the indenture, it was the financial advisors and underwriters suggested that we come back for a formal approval from the council for a support agreement to help back the bonds and help us get a better rate.
Basically, a support agreement, and we've done some of these before, is called moral obligation, and it basically says that if COPTA doesn't have the resources to pay these back, that the city will step up and assist in that process. And the fact of the matter is, we probably have a moral obligation on all the bonds that we do, although they're not always in the documents, because we're probably not going to let bonds default within our umbrella organizations.
Right.
May I ask a question? Is it a legal guarantee of the debt or just us stepping forward and?
It's a moral obligation, and so we
Okay.
have a responsibility to do that. You can't bind the council to this, but it's an intent that the council would step up.
So it's like Jim said, really, I mean, we believe we have that obligation already, that we aren't going to allow these to default. But now we put the moral obligation on that, council passes the resolution, the agreement, and now the underwriters and those buying the investment know that the city's standing behind that.
And we've checked with the rating agencies as to the effect. We don't want to spread your credit too thin. And so we've taken a look with the credit ratings to make sure will this affect our AAA rating that's out there. And we believe at this point in time we have a ways to go before that.
How much is our moral obligation?
I'm sorry?
How much is our moral obligation?
We haven't.
In total, it equals about $12 million annually because we just took on the TIF 8. So it's about $12 million annually. So it's like 3% of our total general fund budget, which is what they kind of look at as a gauge. This adds about 1.4 million. It's estimated about 1.4 million a year that'll add to that obligation.
Does this guarantee affect the interest rates on the bonds in a positive way?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
That's what we're coming forth. They're basically saying that without the debt of COPPA would be riskier than without this obligation. So you'd be paying higher.
Have we ever been called on to pay on any of these kind of bonds?
Yes, we have. We have in the past with COPPA. COPPA had some cash flow issues back in the late 80s, early 90s, and actually there's a support agreement with the Water Utilities Trust.
And for many years, the city provided a subsidy to COTPA, knowing that it didn't have sufficient parking within the system to be able to generate revenues to cover all the debt. So for many years, the city provided a subsidy to COTPA just for the parking side, which we haven't had to do in a long time.
That wasn't based on a failure, internal failure.
Well, it was knowing that the revenues weren't sufficient, so it was really preventing that from occurring.
But we do need to point out that the projections as far as the revenues for this parking garage are so strong. I mean, the demand is really pent up.
And currently, the COP is debt-free.
Yeah.
So all of the revenue that's there, and we believe right now that the net revenue in the system, excluding revenue that will be generated from this garage, is about 2 times coverage on the annual debt service. So you're right, it's in a very strong position.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments or questions here? How about a motion then on item 8L to approve the resolution? Cast your vote. Passed unanimously. Item 8M is to continue some legal services on a lawsuit we're working on. Comments or questions on item 8M? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8N, I understand we do not need executive session?
Do not.
How about a motion then? Cast your votes on 8N. It passed unanimously. Item 8O, I understand we do not need executive session?
Do not.
Cast your votes. It passed unanimously. Item 8P, I understand we do need executive session.
Yes.
All right, how about a motion to move that to executive session? Cast your votes. That item moves on. And item 8Q, I understand we do need executive session.
Yes.
How about a motion to move it into executive session? Cast your votes, and it passes unanimously. Item 8R, I understand we do not need executive session. I think a motion to strike would be in order. All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8S, I understand we do need executive session. All right. Cast second. All right, cast your votes to move item 8S into executive session. It passes unanimously. Item 8T is claims recommended for denial. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 8T? All right, how about a motion? Cast your votes. It passed unanimously. Item 9 is claims recommended for approval. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under item 9, claims recommended for approval? All right, how about a motion? Cast your votes. It passed unanimously. We're on to items from council. James, you want to get us started?
I don't have anything.
All right, Ed?
by Steve Lockmeyer on Friday has generated quite a bit of discussion about a Bricktown parking garage and the impact that might have on the transit hub. And just a comment, which I think is worthy of talking about now, just because we're using taxpayer funds to hire Jacobs to study the Northeast rail line going through Northeast Oklahoma City and the interface that might have with the transit hub. That study is due. I understand the finishing touches are being put on it. It's going to be released in 2 weeks at the transit subcommittee meeting at the end of the month. Rick Kane can't be here. He's at a meeting, but I talked to him yesterday, and he indicated that he talked to Jacobs yesterday, and they have not been contacted about this particular project. So their study, which is now essentially complete, isn't incorporating any kind of potential change. Do you have that slide, Boyd? This is a picture of the transit hub study, and it shows, if you look at the spur in the bottom right, that is the spur that is anticipated to connect potentially to two things. One would be the Northeast Rail Line or the Adventure Line. The second would be a line going to Tinker Air Force Base. So that's our potential, and Pete very well spoke about how important Tinker Air Force Base is. We're currently doing a $1.2 million study by URS that talks about the feasibility of commuter rail. And they are anticipating, they're using as part of their study, this particular spur in those studies. So the policy pronounced by this council is that that's the spur we're going to use. We did a transit hub study, and we looked at different ways that trains might come into this Santa Fe station. And we looked at coming from the south or coming on the north part. It's hard to see, but there's rail line. You could try and come in on the north. The reason that those were rejected during the hub study is that you'd have to come in and then back in along BNSF rails. So you'd have to come onto freight lines and then back in. It's very complicated. Sometimes you have to call dispatch in Fort Worth, and it's very, very difficult. And it would necessitate dealing not only with the Union Pacific Rail road, but also BNSF. And so you double the number of companies you'd have to deal with. So what we saw on Friday is this proposed parking garage, which would use some land that the city owns on the right, and then some that a private developer owns. And it would clearly interfere with the spur that was proposed in the transit hub study, and which is the stated policy goal of this council. Boyd, can you go to the other slide? So this property on the bottom left is the one that's privately owned, and then this surface parking lot is owned by the city and leased. That same developer has a lease on a 25-year lease on that land. I guess a couple of concerns. Number one is that what was put in the paper on Friday is, I think, the third iteration, the third design. It's been done by ADG in conjunction with this developer. So ADG is doing a design on a parking garage which would potentially interfere with the spur, and is at the same time overseeing MAPS 3 funds and the taxpayer hiring of Jacobs to study this spur. And there's no communication between the two. I'm not sure, number one, that doesn't represent a conflict of interest. Number two, I'm not sure, after all the discussion we had in MAPS 3 about how important it is for ADG to coordinate the different bodies to communicate with each other, the different consultants, how we could have Jacobs coming to the end of a study and not know about the work that ADG's done. Again, it's their third iteration of a parking garage. Second, how do we get this far? You wouldn't be able to develop a garage like this without changing the policy of the council. The council would have to say, we're going to interface with the Santa Fe garage in a way differently than we've already voted on, we've already stated as our. So how do we go out and make these economic development efforts without coming back to the council and saying, this would require a policy change on the part of the council. Is the council okay with that? And those are two significant concerns I have. I think that realize on the upper left, the city could do a parking garage on its own. You wouldn't need the private developer. I mean, if we decide it's important enough to put a parking garage there, we have the land, we could do it ourselves. We could even look for private partners. We don't need to put the parking garage into the land owned by that private developer. Now, there may be a win-win solution where maybe even there's a land swap. Maybe you could swap some of the land the city owns so that you could have a parking garage that ran contiguously along where the rail line is to the north, and we could still have our same spur. But those are really the kind of policy decisions that would seemingly be done first before we got this far and we're reading it about in the paper and you have so much concern among the public. And that's, I wish Rick was here, and we'll ask him when he comes back. But again, this is supposed to be discussed at the Transit Subcommittee in 2 weeks. And so I'd like to just further to the discussion. Thanks.
Yeah, Joe, I think Ed's right. I mean, there might be another way to get to these two, two tracks, the Adventure District and Tinker, but it's a non-starter if it shuts off those access. And the city manager and I talked about this morning. So I think they just need to see what their options are. But it can't go as designed there unless they have some idea that we haven't been confronted with.
We're not this far. I mean, at this point in time, we have a concept that's been floated out by a developer, and I think he's floating that out. I know that the developer has met with me once on a preliminary layout of it, and those concerns were expressed to him. I know that he's met with ACOG, and I plan on meeting with ACOG later this week to try to coordinate that a little bit. But I don't think we're very far down this process. We have a developer that has an idea that he's trying to flesh out at this point in time.
See, the issue with that, I understand I'm new in this process, but I should not have to read it in the Oklahoman, the Gazette. The developers, when it comes to projects like this, need to come to the city councilman so that particular councilman would know what's going on. Because, like I said, I had no idea until I read about it in the newspaper, until somebody told me about it. Check out the newspaper. The negative impact that this would have on Ward 7 is words cannot express. Matter of fact, yesterday, I had the opportunity to spend some time with Lee Allen as it relates to this Adventure Line, also as it relates to the Softball Hall of Fame. And so this was discussed. And the negative impact that it could have on the Ward 7, like I said, I'm not in favor of this design, and I wish the developer would take the time out to meet with me about this proposed project.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, I was provided the same email that Councilman Shadid was that provided the talking points for this conversation about land swaps and win-wins and ADG's position in all of this. And I think I need to agree that we're not that far along yet. I think that article in the newspaper was a little premature in terms of where the developer was. And we haven't had an opportunity to take a look at this, and I completely agree that we need to protect, to the best of our ability, these options that we've laid out and that were council positions. I just don't feel like perhaps we needed to get quite so stirred up about this before we move a little bit further along and know exactly what all the options are.
Larry, do you want to say anything? Okay. You want to talk about this issue, Pete?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
My concern is that I'll accept we're not that far along, but the lack of coordination, that's troubled me with regard to all the map stuff. We finally forced people to get together and sit around the same table and start talking about how one project overlaps another. And this is just another example of that. I mean, this is like, as the mayor said, I almost didn't say anything after you used the term non-starter, because that's the way it is for me. If we don't make a long-term decision about rail, even if it's 10 years out before we can do it, or 20 years out before we can do it, We cannot afford to continue to just ignore that possibility. We did it with the Union Station, and we're paying a cost in terms of expense for that, for ignoring it that way when we agreed to that, to the way the interstate flows. And we just can't make any more decisions like that. Rail is going to come more and more and more expensive as time goes on, and it is going to be the test of what in my opinion, transit is the next test of whether we're a big league city or not. And we can't make short-term decisions about a parking garage and let that interfere with our possibility of really moving into the next level. You said it much more succinctly. It's a non-starter if they don't figure out a way around it.
Back to items from council. Larry, you have anything?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. This is mundane compared to this high and lofty discussion here. I'd like to thank the neighbors of Briarwood for an excellent hosting of my wife and I Friday night. I'd like to pass along, if you would, Jim, to David Todd in the MAPS 3 office, that one of his assistants, Brent Ward, has come to the front and taken over for the past president at Briarwood, who is battling cancer, Bob Helsel, who's been a tremendous civic leader over the years, and wish him well. And Brent did an excellent job presenting to the neighbors who were present a status of the MAPS 3 projects. And you all can be all concerned and all, but I got to tell you, after his presentation, the neighbors were very, very enthused and positive on the progress that had gone on up to this point in MAPS 3, and we're eagerly awaiting the next step in the implementation. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, Pete? All right, David?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a last-minute reminder, tonight in Ward 5, we'll have a community meeting addressing public safety. It'll be held at Southern Hills Baptist Church, 86th and South Pennsylvania. Police Chief Bill City will be the first speaker, and he'll look at some of the statistics related to crime in Ward 5 and compare that to other parts of the city, as well as a few other topics. Jan Perry, the director of the YWCA, will also speak tonight, and she'll address domestic violence and some of those issues related to that, and how we can help individuals, whether they're friends or relatives, who may be experiencing some of those difficulties. Finally, from the Oklahoma City Public Schools, we're going to have board member Ron Milligan, as well as the Moore Public School Superintendent, Susie Pierce, talk in terms of public safety as it relates to our schools, and focus on the governor's task force in regards to the shooting that took place back in December in Connecticut, what our public school systems are doing with respect to public safety. So I hope everyone can join us, even those outside of Ward 5. We'd love to have you, and it'll basically be limited to about an hour as far as the formal presentation, but all of us will be willing and eager to stick around and visit with individuals one-on-one. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, just a couple of quick things. I wanted to congratulate the Oklahoma City Memorial for a fantastic Reflection of Hope event yesterday at lunchtime. The honoree this year was the young Pakistani girl, Malala, who was shot for supporting girls' education, and it was a fabulous presentation. Her father was here from London to accept the award on their behalf, and he was incredibly passionate about the role that education for everyone plays in creating world peace, and it was really wonderful. I'd also like to congratulate Heronville Elementary School. They were named this year as one of 14 Oklahoma City public schools as a Great Expectation School, and it's a school that the city's had a wonderful partnership with. I think we've got 94 or 97 city employees serving as reading buddies down at Heronville, and it was so exciting on Friday to see these kids just radiate the joy and excitement about their school motto and their strength. It was really very, very nice. And lastly, I had the opportunity to attend the Main Street Banquet last week, and I wanted to congratulate Stockyards and the Oklahoma Opry. They won the award for the fantastic new neon sign that hangs outside the Oklahoma Opry. So, thank you.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To briefly, to continue discussion about the Adventure Line, yesterday I had the great opportunity to spend some time with Lee Allen Smith, of course, who has been working hard raising private dollars for the Softball Hall of Fame. And so part of that discussion dealt with the eventual line. And so so happened one of our county commissioners was with me at that meeting. And so we got in the truck and we rode on the side of the eventual line, what could be. I see the possibilities there for the city as a whole to transport individuals from the downtown Bricktown area to the eventual district, but I also see 10, 15 years from now of what that line could actually mean for the city as a whole. I do have several issues in regards to the maintenance of that area because in certain parts of that particular path of the eventual line also is the walking trail. Of course, we did spent all this money on walking trails, but from 10th Street to, I want to say, 50th Street, the conditions of those walking trails are terrible, I've never seen so much trash. And what Oklahoma County has done, they basically went through and cleaned out a whole lot of that stuff. But that's the city's responsibility, not Oklahoma County. Yesterday, we did see a few people out in that area cutting some grass, but the large portion of that area has been cleaned out by Oklahoma County, not the city of Oklahoma City. Now, in that, there were a whole lot of swamp, I say swamp, running water between, again, from 10th Street to 50th Street. You're talking about mosquitoes. We have work cut out for us. The second issue, today we'll celebrate the homegoing of former County Commissioner Shirley Darrell, and her service will be at 2 o'clock. Former Commissioner Darrell passed away from cancer. Some of you all had the opportunity to see her a few weeks ago at the swearing-in service. And I also would like to acknowledge the JFK Neighborhood Association for allowing me to speak this past weekend. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Pat? All right. City manager reports?
We do have a couple of presentations this morning. The first is regarding the Convention and Visitors Bureau report. Mr. Carrier is here.
Good morning. Pleasure to be with you all again today and bring you our third quarter report, which we have submitted to you, and hopefully you've had a chance to look over it. Hit just a few highlights of that as we are moving rapidly through what is now the fourth quarter of our fiscal year. So we have had a pretty good year so far. The fourth quarter of our year, April, May, June, is a time when many of the meetings in our industry are held. And I say that because we have a lot of decisions being made right now. We've had a lot of tentatives on the books. This is a time of year when a lot of the decisions for future dates are being made, either through all delegate votes or board of directors meetings or site committee meetings or whatever the process is for some of those groups. So we fully expect that there will be a number of decisions being made this spring that we'll be able to talk to you about in the next quarter. At the same time, our hotel occupancy continues to be very strong. We're enjoying some of the strongest numbers in the industry and particularly in this region of the country. Our hotel tax is up almost 9% year to date. That's a combination of nice rate increases, but also strong occupancy levels. And so we feel very good about what's happening here. Those things are a combination of corporate, leisure, and convention travel that's coming to Oklahoma City, and a very healthy balance in those three. So we're not dependent on any one sector as we are with some other aspects, and we see some of our competitors being. Just wanted to also let you know we had the opportunity, and while it occurred during the fourth quarter, it'll be old news by the time I come back to give you a final report for the year. We were in Louisville, Kentucky a couple of weeks ago to promote the National Association of Sports Commissions, which will be holding their annual meeting here in Oklahoma City next March, end of March, 1st of April. During that meeting, the Oklahoma City Convention Bureau was named the Large City CVB of the Year by NASC. I'm very proud of that. It reflects a lot of good work by our entire community in the sports world. I've told you before, we don't have anything to sell without all of our partners, and so it reflects very well on our hotels, our facilities, and the people here in the sports industry that allow us the opportunity to go out and talk about them and sell what they have and to bring people into the city. We also received the Redbud Award, which is the State Tourism Industries Award, for our website. Now, the best website of any of the tourism promotion agencies or attractions, et cetera, in the state, and the Merit Award for our 2012 Visitors Guide. In the equine and livestock events, we are seeing a very active spring. We are now getting into the major shows, beginning with the Redbud, which will occur next month, along with non-pro cutting and the NRHA Derby. We've had some very nice, what would be qualifier shows, some of the smaller shows during the spring, good results from those. We fully expect that there will be a number of top quality shows that will be staying with us for a long time, and we're very pleased with that. We have some new things on the horizon. Tourism, leisure tourism and group tourism going quite well. We are seeing, again, more and more response to our advertising. Our website traffic is up, which now is probably the primary way that people are finding out about areas where they may wish to visit. And so we're seeing good numbers there, a lot of activity, a lot of interest. So things are very good. We're very pleased with what's happening. We appreciate your all's continued support. We look forward to having Councilwoman Sayer on our I've got to get used to that. Eugene Sayer is our chairman. Councilwoman Salyer is our new city council representative on the commission. So got to get used to the difference between those two. But look forward to having her serve with us, and happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
Yeah, Ed?
Just looking through the city contract, the proposed 2014, what is the general fund revenue for special marketing?
You're talking about next year's budget?
Right.
Okay.
Or any year.
Yeah. The city has participated in the funding of the marketing for some of our major horse shows over a number of years. And the CVB has been the vehicle to provide that money to these shows through from city budget. So it is to help provide the shows, particularly the AQHA World Show, with some additional funds to help promote the show, to draw in. That's probably our oldest, longest standing show. It's also the largest show that we have at the fairgrounds, and certainly is a very prestigious show internationally.
So I guess the question I have, we have a dedicated funding source, the hotel motel tax, and we dedicate 1/11 of that to event sponsorship. It's doing extremely well, some double digits some months, but overall 9% increase. We've just had our second month in a row with a decrease in sales tax revenue. That's the first time in 18 months. It's not a trend, but it is 2 months in a row. A lot of obligations for the general fund. We're going to increase that 1/11 for event sponsorship, $150,000 this year, from $1.1 million to $1.25 million. I'm wondering, is there still a need to take $75,000 out of the general fund when we have an additional $150,000 that the hotel motel tax is generating for special marketing?
I would argue that there is. The people that come here for those horse shows spend a whole lot of money in this community outside of the hotels. And frankly, the $75,000 is a fairly small amount in the grand scheme of things to show the city's continued investment and understanding that these people are spending a lot of money in our retail shops, in restaurants, in other aspects of retail shopping and the economy aside from just the hotels. A few years ago, that amount was $125,000. And I was not here when that was implemented. I don't know if Councilman McAtee, I suspect, can give you a better history lesson on it or whatever.
Actually, Councilman Ryan was
Councilman Ryan,
introducing that
several of the folks,
down.
but certainly it says to the horse show industry that the city understands the value of that industry and of those folks being here and appreciates the fact that they do come and participates in more ways than just through the hotel tax.
Mike, we could prioritize them, but I mean, the taxpayers voted for a dedicated funding source for this purpose. I mean, we have a dedicated funding source for the zoo, but we don't take money from the general fund to supplement that. I mean, you've got, when I look at how that $1.25 million is spent, we're throwing it to a lot of organizations and $1,000 for this tennis tournament, or $2,000 for this tennis tournament, or $10,000 for the summer dog show this summer that's sponsored by Purina. Lots of money for the Youth Expo, which an article in the Oklahoman last week was quite damaging. I mean, I'm wondering, if that's a priority, can we live within the confines of this $1.25 million budget and not access the general fund?
Yeah, if you're looking for comments, I would just say I think we underfund it in general. I don't like taking general fund money and putting it into this either. But when you look at the similar cities that we compete with, their budgets for things like this are larger than ours. You know, it would have been nice when we passed that resolution back in December of '04 that dedicated that money if we had put more money into event promotion and perhaps less into the capital needs. But we can't change that now. And so I guess those are just my views on it. I don't like general fund money going to this either, but these are investments that drive our economy, and tourism is such a driver for our general fund that it's hard to deny that it's a good investment. I just wish we could invest it coming from a different source.
One last, how much is, it seems like there is competition between cities. How much of this is subsidies to conventions or incentives to compete with other cities? I mean, Fort Worth offers incentives, so then we offer a bigger incentive. How much of that, when we say sponsorship, how much is subsidies or incentives to lure it to Oklahoma City?
Well, a lot of it has to do with the way that other cities provide for groups that come. Great example, Fort Worth gives away their convention center and most of their other facilities. They do not charge for them depending on the size of your group. We don't do that. We instead use the event support money, use some other dollars through our line item budget, et cetera, to pay the rent for some of these groups to help subsidize their being here when it's necessary. It's not something we go give them right up front, but certainly if that's what it takes to close the deal, you know, we're certainly looking at that. Various cities subsidize things in a lot of different ways. You know, and so we have to be very cautious, very judicious about how we do that in order to fund as many of those groups as we can and provide for the opportunity to draw all of them in here. The event sponsorship fund that you talked about, the committee of the Convention and Visitors Commission that makes the recommendation on those looks very closely at what each one of those activities brings in to that fund. That's one of the things that they look at is, you know, what's the room nights generated? How much does that equate to in a close estimation based on the average daily rate for a hotel room to put money back into that fund? is it a good investment? And they look at it as an investment, not as a subsidy. If we are investing soundly in some of these larger conventions, or even some of the small ones, are we getting a good return on that investment in a variety of different ways, including the overall tax generation, not just hotel tax, but city sales tax that is coming in from these. So we look at a variety of things as we make those kinds of judgments. It would be great if we had enough money in the event sponsorship fund. You saw that list, but there are a number that didn't get funded. There are a number of groups that ask for money that get turned down or get half of what they have asked for. It's challenging every time we have one of those meetings and look to see what people are asking for and have to make those value judgments. So, I can't disagree with what the mayor or what you're saying about would it be nice to have the dollars, but our budget is half of what our competition's. Councilwoman Sawyer saw it last week. I think the mayor did too when we did a presentation that, we continually look for sources of funds and ways to do things to keep us competitive. This happens to be one of those that, again, Councilman Ryan has been very vocal about it over the years, but certainly the opportunity to continue to support these shows in an appropriate way and in a way that it is truly an investment in the future of Oklahoma City that is going to continue to return a stronger investment or stronger return to our city coffers than what it's costing us.
Yeah.
I'd like to know where Oklahoma City stands with regard to the hotel motel tax in terms of how our rate relates to other cities. Could we get a report of the cities that Mike says are our primary competition about what I've always felt it's too low, and if it were in that, and that's where it ought to come from.
Larry?
It could fund some other things also too.
And Councilman, I'll be happy to put that together for you. I will tell you that we look at not the hotel tax, but the total tax at checkout. State, city, and hotel tax combined, where are we? And so I'll give you a report of a number of cities and break it down that way and some other factors in it.
Don't misunderstand. I agree with the mayor and Councilman Shadid that it shouldn't come from general fund revenue. And so if we could find a way to make it come from a source that is more directly related, I'd be really, that would solve a problem for me.
Yeah, well, you heard him say that in some cities, they just allow people to use their convention center for free and things like that.
I understand,
but that would have to be subsidized by the general fund to make it up. So
Oklahoma City's not, Ed loves to say, and he's right, that we live and die by sales tax, and we just can't, they may, Fort Worth may be able to do that, but they have other kinds of revenue sources that we don't have an opportunity to have. I know they have that one fund that a 1% tax that goes directly to that kind of stuff. And they get some ad valorem tax, they get lots of other things. And so I think when we start, the illustration about the zoo is a good one. The zoo does great things for Oklahoma City too, but we're not putting extra subsidy into it every now and again. I mean, so I think I'd be interested to know how much is generated by the hotel motel tax in various cities, because that's the competition level, is what they charge.
yeah, what is it's 5.5%?
Our tax is 5.5%.
You add that to the 8.375.
13.875% is our total tax at checkout.
I don't go to any city, Mike, that it's 5.5%. I went to Florida this spring for spring training baseball. Stayed in Bradenton and North Palm Beach. Substantially higher than 5.5%.
Well, and I would also say it depends on how it's shown on your bill, because a lot of cities, there are cities that show hotel tax as 13%. Well, that may be a combination of all of the taxes. So it sometimes is confusing to the guest and to us also. So
I just want to make sure we're not on the low end of it and then subsidizing it with general fund money.
Right.
That's my point.
Yeah,
May I
might
ask
be
a
worth a
question
good
on
review. Yeah, Pat, and then Larry.
Mike, a couple of years ago, that was $125,000,
Correct.
and it's been reduced to $75,000
Yes, sir.
over the years.
Yes, sir.
Have you seen an adverse result because of that reduction? Have we lost shows?
We have
because of that?
not, we have not lost shows. We have had to make up the amount in other ways.
Right. I know that's the intent, I think, of what Councilman Shadid was talking about. There's other avenues of raising funds out there that aren't available to a lot of institutions that are generators of sales tax revenue.
All right, Larry?
Thank you, Your Honor. Without boring you with too much history, Jim, I need your help to make sure that I'm on the right track here. In 2004, when this whole motel tax issue came up, the hoteliers were very concerned, were they not, Jim, about being at a competitive disadvantage versus what the charges would be tax-wise at surrounding communities?
Yes.
And did we not make a commitment to them that said we are not going to just raise the sales tax, the room tax, and take the money out of the general fund that we're currently investing in these extra activities? We're not going to shrink that up to zero. We are going to maintain that in addition to the motel tax that we're wanting your support on.
They expressed the concerns that general fund dollars would go away at the time. That's correct.
And didn't we kind of give our commitment? Now, I understand I, as a councilman at that time, cannot speak for you as councilman right now, but did not we as council at that time kind of indicate that we would not do that? That was my recollection.
There was certainly discussion about keeping that funding in place. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other comments on this?
I had one.
Questions?
You mentioned that some organizations ask for money that we can't give them. Does that cause them to not come here and have their convention or activity, or
Yes.
or do they come here anyway?
Well, it really depends on the entire package. And again, as we're competing with a Fort Worth or Kansas City or other cities, depending on what the entire package that we are able to offer, a subsidy to help them pay the rent versus a rent-free facility, transportation support. If they're using outlying hotels and they're going to have to spend $100,000 on transportation, and that's not an unusual expense, what can we do to help support them so that they don't have the expense here that they would have in others, or don't have the so that they don't have the expense here that they would not have in other cities, I guess is the right way to say it. So, yeah, it really depends. And we have lost conventions, we have lost some other types of shows because we were not able to provide enough financial support for them to offset the additional costs that they would have here versus another city.
Does that happen more often than not whenever we don't give them what they
It happens, it generally happens a handful of times a year.
Do you keep a list of those different organizations who come to you that you are not able to help?
Well, we keep a list of all the business that we work on that we lose and the reasons why we lose it, so that as things change, whether it's the facilities, the hotels, whatever the reason is, we can always go back and revisit those things and see if we can recruit them at another time.
Do you all, for as the area of Oklahoma City, are able to track down of, let's say, for instance, if something's going on in the Bricktown, are you all able to track the event? I mean, I'm sorry. Let me better explain it. Are you, let's say, if there's a convention in town, are you able to say, hey, because of this convention, Bricktown revenue went up by so many dollars, or Midtown by so many dollars?
Loosely. We can give you an idea of how much that particular event would typically bring in based on their attendance, the number of days they were here, et cetera. Exactly where they're spending their money, no. We can, that's where looking at sales tax receipts. We know that when there's an extremely large event, it's a little easier to track because you do see more in areas aside from downtown. And so there are aspects of that. The horse shows, obviously, the larger horse shows, we see the sales tax changes in the Meridian area predominantly, but all of our groups are much more mobile now than they have been in years past. The horse shows are a great example. For a number of years, they were kind of captive to the Meridian area. We're seeing a lot more of them downtown. Bricktown has changed, and so as more and more businesses and restaurants open down here, we're seeing more of that traffic come here. We're seeing more traffic going to Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum, other areas. So, it's a much more mobile environment today than it was just a few years ago. We try as much as we can to track. Hotel rooms are the one area that we can track pretty easily, although it's not as good as it used to be. Reservations made via the internet outside of room blocks create problems for all of the industry. So, but that's the one area that we can track a little bit better than we can anything else. But we try to monitor it as closely as we can, give it our best shot.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, other questions? All right, Mike, thanks.
Thank you.
And Donna Morris is here this morning to update us on some of the activities with the Metropolitan Library System. Thanks for coming, Donna.
Good morning. Thanks for letting me come and speak for just a few minutes about our newest libraries in the system. I did want to take the opportunity to thank all of you all for being good partners to the library system over the years. I think that it shows that you recognize that great cities need great libraries, and that's what makes a city great. As you know, we've been partners with the Public Works Department of the city, and I also want to take the opportunity, they're our liaison for all of the library projects, and I want to take the opportunity to thank them and thank you all for having such a good staff as we work through this. About a year ago, we opened the Patience S. Ladding Northwest Library. We expected that library to be immediately busy. It's proven to be that. The first week, they were open the last week of May. The first week, they had over 8,000 visitors to that library. The very next week, they had 26,000 visitors to that. The very next month, 26,000 visitors. To date, they've had almost 200,000 people visit that library since it opened. To put it in perspective for you, over the year that we're about to finish to date, we've had about 2.7 million visitors to the libraries in our system, which is more than OU football games, Oklahoma City Thunder games. People are going to the libraries every day, and I think that's important to remember that sometimes. The library there is on tap to be, from the first month that it was open, the Northwest Library, it immediately shot up to be the second busiest library in our system. The Edmond Library, we have 19 libraries, 8 of them are Oklahoma City libraries. The Edmond Library is not only the busiest library in our system, it's the busiest public library in the state of Oklahoma. So the Northwest Library is already up to the second busiest library in our system, and they're going to end up probably at about 750,000 items circulated or checked out by the time this fiscal year ends. So I did want to read you something real briefly that a customer sent to our library commission, because I think it kind of signifies how important it is to people in the community. The Patience Ladding Northwest Library is a significant asset to the northwest quadrant of the metropolitan area and a wonderful service to the public. Thank you for using our tax dollars in such a constructive way. The library building is inviting, functional, and user-friendly. The sculptures make it downright fun. The staff is always informed, polite, friendly, and eager to help. The first time I used the computer at the library, a young man came in and sat at the computer next to me. We greeted each other, and then he said, "I love this library," and I agreed. I believe the library is already contributing to an enhanced sense of community and to the improved education to the public. It is understandable that it is always busy, and I think you all don't hear those kinds of stories very often about the library. The second new library that we opened actually in February of 2013, and that was also due to the efforts of many of the people here at this table. We had an opportunity to keep the Almonte Library open, which had served for a year as the temporary location for our Southern Oaks Library. And due to some meetings with Mr. Couch and some of the city council members, we were able to make that happen. And we spent 4 months renovating that facility. We closed it down in August, I believe, of 2012 and reopened Southern Oaks in 2013. and then spent 4 months adding some walls and some carpet and some paint and some other things, and turned it around in 4 months, which is pretty remarkable. We opened on February 4th of 2013. In the month of February, we had over 8,000 visitors at that library, and the very next month, it went up to 11,000 visitors. They're currently on track to circulate. They've had about 4,000 people use the computer during the 3 months. That's all the records that we have, and they've circulated about 11,000 books, I think, this last month. Put that in perspective for you, the Ralph Ellison Library, which has been established in the city for a long time, circulated about 11,000 items. So that library is going to be a success. The manager there said that the first week that they did a story time, they had 2 kids and 3 adults, and the very next week they had 16 kids and 6 adults. So I think your money's being spent wisely there, and I think it's a real success story. Might also mention that Ralph Ellison was also part of the general obligation bond package. That's opened in 2010. It's a hub in the community, a lot of heavy computer users, and the Southern Oaks Library, as I mentioned, opened in 2012, and it's also very, very busy. You know, I can give you any information about that you want, but I just wanted you to know that those projects that were funded with general obligation have been very successful. The people in the communities are really using the library, and it really makes our community great. And I did bring, if we have time, I know time is short, a 3-minute video that tells a couple of stories from some of our customers, and I think that's what you need to hear more than what you need to hear from me, is how people use their libraries and how they think they're important in the community.
Growing up as an adolescent, I had a reading disability, and I started going to the library with my brother, and we started reading together. It was a good experience, me and my brother, and hanging out, riding our bicycles up there. Both of our parents, they worked during the day, and we were latchkey kids, so it's kind of a fun experience for us. Go to the library, and everyone always treated us really nice. Once I started reading, it was like my brain just opened up, and I was able to learn.
Reading is very important, and I know that, because my grandfather was my hero, but he couldn't read. And I learned a lot from him, and that's why now I'm a teacher. So that's very special to me.
Reading takes you out of your own life. It takes you to other worlds. It helps you to think. It improves your mind. I can't think of anything that is more exciting than to have a book.
I was lucky enough to have a public library a block away from my house. I just love the freedom and independence that I had when I was old enough to walk there by myself, to go to the library, to browse the shelves, to have worlds opened up to me that involved travel and adventure and places that I could go and things that I could learn that I could not have just in my own neighborhood.
Oklahoma City is so fortunate to have a wonderful library system. Not everyone can afford to go to the local bookstore and buy books, and the computers that the library offers are very important. There are just so many things that the libraries provide, including even music and DVDs. It's a wonderful community asset, and I think we're very fortunate.
Words cannot explain like I said, the life-changing experiences it brings to our children and to our community, the whole 9 yards.
So I just thought you might enjoy that. That comes from the customer's perspective, not from mine. And again, I just want to thank you for support of libraries in Oklahoma City, and be glad to answer any questions.
Just a quick question, Donna, when do we get the sign?
I knew you were going to ask that. Studio Architects is designing the sign for the Northwest Library. We don't have the permanent sign up yet, and so hopefully we'll get that design back in a week or two, and then we'll get construction underway.
We missed, Mrs. Ladding died before we had a chance to put the sign up.
I know, but I apologize.
All right. David?
Thank you, Your Honor. Donna, thank you for the presentation. I think we do have the best library system of any city throughout the country, and we may not have the size of New York City or Chicago, but certainly no one can compare with the dedication of the employees of the library system. So thank you for leading that effort. I would like to also make a comment that some of the smaller libraries, such as the more recent Almonte Center, as well as Capitol Hill, and the Wright Library, which was shown in the video, which is the smallest.
And oldest.
Oldest, yes, it's in stockyards. I think those may be more important than some of the others, just because the lack of mobility that the residents around those libraries have. You know, we found as we looked further into the Almonte Center that even though Southern Oaks was just 3 miles or so away, the fact that there was no public transportation going east to west prevented people along May Avenue and further west between 59th and 44th and all the way up to 240 from accessing the library. Many of those individuals may only have one car available to the household. Certainly that is the same way in the Capitol Hill area as well as the stockyard. So while those newer, larger ones are great to look at and great to utilize, I think some of the smaller ones serve a critical purpose as well. Thank you.
If I could, Donna, I'd just like to thank you so much and particularly compliment your staff at the Downtown Library. They are faced with some challenges that maybe some of our other libraries aren't, and they do so with such grace and dignity, and I really appreciate the extra attention.
Well, thank you. I'll pass that on to him.
All right, John?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of weeks ago, I had a chance to speak at the Friends of the Ralph Ellison Library, and I talked about having a community-engaged library because that library is truly a community-engaged library. That library is almost like a community center,
right?
Which is great. So Michael Owens, the director there, has done an outstanding job. Thank you.
A couple comments. One has to do with Capitol Hill. What are your plans? That library is exploding with children. I mean, when school's out, I mean, the latchkey kids are just, I mean, there's no possible way that building handles those kids. I mean,
Well,
they're just crawling all over each other.
The good news is it was part of the 2000 and 2007 GO bond package. We've had some challenges there, but you all should be seeing in a couple of weeks the contract for architectural services, and then we will launch on the design, and then we'll renovate that and expand it.
Do you plan on expanding the facility itself?
Well, I think that has to do with the amount of available money that we have. We might not be able to expand it in the traditional way that you might think. At both Southern Oaks and Ralph Ellison, we were able to add about 4,000 square feet, and that was our original plan. It might not be as easy to do because the building's so old and it's on 2 floors, but we certainly will expand some of the, we can do bump outs, which is kind of what we did at Southern Oaks. We made little bump outs in some of the back walls to give some additional space for computers, which they really need, and maybe some quiet space. The problem is the second floor. We don't like to run libraries on 2 floors because it means you need double staff. So we're going to try and get all the public functions on the bottom floor, and then we'll leave some staff functions on the top. That's our goal.
Well, from looking at it, it would seem to me that expansion to the south, I mean, if we had to take some homes in order to do that, that's the only way you're going to expand the footprint.
Right. You'd have to put a new entrance on the south.
Unless you add square feet.
Well, that was our original goal, but I think because the time has passed, we might not have enough money to do that, but we'll certainly do whatever we can to get some additional space in there.
Well, you've got children going to that library that are not being served because there's not space to do it.
Right.
And I'd like to be sure that you understand that.
Oh, I do. I understand it.
I've been there at 2:30 in the afternoon, and they're just...
And the computers have waiting lists, and they don't have computers at home, and they do a lot of programming efforts with those after-school kids and homework help. So that's going to be the main priority there.
The other thing is many people are like Councilman Greenwell said, they're bound by the fact they don't have transportation. And so a lot of children, the only libraries they see are the libraries in their schools.
Right.
What relationship does the library system have to the school library system?
Well, I think that we have a pretty good one. Some of the libraries, I don't know if you know this, you probably don't, in Oklahoma City, they don't necessarily have a dedicated school library media specialist in each school. And so in some of those facilities, if they're within walking distance, like Parmalee Elementary is right behind the Southern Oaks Library, and those kids walk over on a regular basis, and then our staff goes over there and provides information to them so that they can come over to the library. And then we try to provide the homework help after school for those that walk. And that's pretty prevalent at the urban libraries like Ralph Ellison, Southern Oaks, Capitol Hill, some of those where we try to do a little bit more of that and try to have a better relationship with the schools.
Well, the two schools I've been in the last couple of years both have to have libraries because there's no way kids can walk from Greenville to Capitol Hill or from Hayes to the Southern Oaks. And so the libraries are in the schools.
Right.
And it seems, I know both of the children that I have been associated with, one at Heronville and the one now at Hayes, don't have access to books other than that library. The public library would be wonderful. They had somebody to pick them up and take them there, but they don't.
Right.
And so their access to books is right there in the school.
Right. We do have a couple of outreach programs. One of them is called Come Read With Me, and the other one's after school, I can't remember the end of the name, where we actually send some volunteers out to the various schools, especially in areas like that where they don't have a public library close, and they either read with them after school or in the summer, and then they have some summer programs. We also in the past used to have some programs at some of the park facilities, but I don't think we do that as much now as we used to, and it's just a matter of funding. You know, the kids used to come more often to the public library, but the schools, you know, they don't have the resources to be able to bus them as much as they used to. But we're aware of it, and we do try to get out. We're trying to find a way that we can, for example, in the summer, sign the kids up remotely for library cards as well as to participate in the summer reading program. So we're working on those kind of things.
Well, since the children's reading skills are such a big part of this testing mania that's going on in the in evaluating public schools right now, it seems to me that if we're going to do what we need to do for public education, we've got to reach out to those children that don't have the same opportunity.
Right. I think studies show that over the summer months, children lose a lot of their reading skills, and so that's why some of the summer reading programs that are done in the public libraries, and also if they're done through some of the other churches or other facilities, are really important so that they can maintain their skill level.
There's an effort currently to try to keep the schools open year-round, because especially now that they have gymnasiums. It would seem to me that a logical adjunct to that would be the library.
The library.
And it probably would take library staff as opposed to public school staff to make that happen. So I would encourage you to look into that if you could, because
We'll look into it. We've struggled with the same funding problems that everybody else does, although our funding's been fairly stable. But, you know, once you extend those staff to remote areas like that, you got to have enough staff to do that.
I mean, I understand your funding problem, but it's been pretty.
Ours has been good. I need to say that, but
it's not been. You've done all these expansions and the bond money. I mean, you've funding it should not be the sole barrier. I mean, obviously money's finite, but
sure.
The need for inner city kids to have access to libraries is
critical,
almost insatiable. But if we don't start doing a better job of it, these test scores are going to continue to be plummet, and we've got to find a way to do better.
Well, we'll work on that.
All right.
Pete, just to respond real quickly, we seriously do need to consider looking at the next bond project to look towards expanding some of the smaller inner city libraries, such as the Capitol Hill, the Wright, and maybe even looking at putting in a new library, provide the funding, because the city pays for the facility, the building, in a more urban, centralized area of the city, because instead of just continuing to expand outwards on the outlying areas.
My concern about Capitol Hill is if we just say it's going to cost too much, we're not going to get it done.
We're going to get it done.
What it's going to cost. We need to find out what it's going to cost and what it would take, and then let people that can raise the money, like this body, determine whether or not we can get it or not. You can't just say there's not enough money, because that's not going to cut it. We've got to provide those services. Otherwise, we're going to lose generations of children because access to library is just a part of being an American. I mean, it's like apple pie. I mean, if you've got to be able to read, you've got to be able to have access. That's many children's view of the world. I mean, you said some of that in that clip, and we've got kids that are not getting that view.
Right. We will work with your public works staff and the architects, and I guarantee you that we'll be able to add some additional space there.
Okay.
All right, Donna, thank you.
Thank you.
Sidewalks would help too.
All right. Citizens to be heard. Joe Sarge Nelson.
I'm Joe Sarge Nelson. I've been here before, and this has been an interesting day for me here. I get to see action in the works. The lady that just left here could tell you probably more about what I'm doing up here than what I'm getting ready to tell you. But what the bottom line is, a few weeks back I presented a document to you about our horse slaughtering business in Oklahoma. I've been out the Capitol Sunday. There was an organization out there, pretty much the same as I was, about the destruction of our young animals, cats, dogs, things of this nature, and some of the photographs I saw were quite sickening, to say the least. But I'm mainly here to let them live, the horse riding. For most of you all may not understand that Oklahoma is the horse capital of the world. Go to the library, they'll tell you that right off the bat. And Oklahoma City is the capital of Oklahoma. I would like somebody today, since I presented a resolution and an ordinance a few weeks back, very plain, speaks for itself, hits the heart of everything. I would like very much for somebody to step up to the microphone and offer to make a motion before this council that we get it before the council and see if we can get it passed.
Well, Sarge, let me address your concerns, because you did bring it up a couple of weeks ago. In general, the council has a history of not checking in on state issues in general. For instance, there's talk about changing the state income tax level. We all have opinions about it. We haven't necessarily tried to pass a resolution in support or opposition. I talked to a couple of the council people, though, when the horse slaughter bill came before us, because it did seem with our stockyards presentation that we might be impacted somewhat. We made the conscious choice, I say we, there was nothing formal about it, not to push to take it for our legislative committee, not to go in front of our elected representatives over on 23rd Street, but rather eventually discuss and potentially fight the battle if those facilities were intended to be built inside of the Oklahoma City limits. And I think there's a little bit of cordiality in this, in that we deal with some controversial things here, and I don't think we would invite all the state legislators to weigh in on our issues.
Makes sense.
So there's a little bit of that going on here. And so that's kind of been our unannounced and very unofficial lack of strategy, if you will, about dealing with horse slaughters. Because I think there's probably a difference of opinions here on the horseshoe, but because it's been a state issue to this point, I think we've chosen by our inactivity to stay out of it.
Okay. You all are aware, though, that there are 3 applications within a 50-mile radius that has presented applications for just the horse slaughter itself.
I am not aware of that.
One of them is in Cache, the other one is in Slaughterville, and the other one is in Purcell. I've seen all 3. I am critical about this. I do know that the governor made it plain that each city could adapt their own ordinance to prevent the ban from being raised. All I'm asking is that since we are the capital of the state of Oklahoma, and we are the horse industry's capital, the ban is only there that we're not going to allow it to be in Oklahoma city limits, period.
I just think it's an issue that's not really ripe for discussion until there's an actual proposal for us to look at.
What would you consider a proposal?
Well, if there was a developer who wanted to develop or take on this line of work inside the Oklahoma city limits, then I think it'd be appropriate for us to check in and look at the legalities of whether or not we could stop it if we wanted to. There are county restrictions, there are city restrictions, and the specific location of the facility might matter.
Oh, I've already checked and there's a great deal of that. A lot of stuff, the health issues.
Sometimes there's discretion, sometimes there's not, especially when dealing at the stockyards area. So I just think it's wise for us to watch, and if it does come to us, then we have something specific to discuss. It's just too general for us to say yes or no when we don't really have enough information about what we're talking about.
I respect that. I respect that. But all I ask you all to do is keep an open mind about this. This is our industry. Long before we were even born, this is our heritage. And if it ever even begins to trickle like it's coming this direction, I would like to think that one of you all would step up to the plate and say, it ain't going to happen here. Just that simple. And like I say, I do respect all of you in your own right, Mayor, Council, Mr. Kenneth, Jordan. I appreciate your time. Y'all have a nice day.
Thanks, Sarge. We have executive session. We'll be back. We have returned from executive session and we are adjourned.